So here's the pitch, okay? We've all seen Miss Swifts. It's that outtake show, and it was running in, and I saw chat spamming when I told Jordan to focus. So we're gonna run with that. Strike while the iron is hot. Jordan, sitting at his desk at the video team section. I don't know what they do. I don't care what they do. But for the premise of this video, cannot be focused. Watching anime butts on one screen. I don't care what he's doing. Just can't be working, all right? And then he hears Miss Swifts. Big TV right behind him. Miss Swifts playing. Here's the line. Says, Jordan, focus, okay? And then his eyes go wide. He turns around, turns off the TV. He's trying to get rid of me. He knows he's not focused, but he knows he needs to be. But goes back to his desk, goes back to doing whatever he was doing. But he has to focus. So I'm at his window. Boom, slam on the window. I'm like the Babadook, okay? He doesn't know where I'm coming from. I slam the window, piece of paper, says focus. He does a little bit. He focuses a little bit. He doesn't turn off the anime butts. No. He flips his hat around, Ash Ketchum style. I don't know. And then he goes back to doing anything he wants, but not focusing. That's not enough for me. That's not enough for hi-rez. It's not enough for what we stand for. So I appear behind the wall behind him, okay? Boom, Mifflin, up there. I tell him to tighten up. He needs to focus. He does a little bit more. He focuses a little bit, but not enough, okay? And then it's not enough for me. It's not enough for me, okay? We have to go even further beyond that, all right? He does eventually close the screen, but that's not enough. I'm still appearing. I'm appearing everywhere. I'm in the bathroom. I'm in his cereal. I'm in his snacks. I'm telling him to focus, and eventually he switches desks. I'm under his desk, okay? I'm telling him to focus there, and that's where it happens. He sits in a maxonomic chair, his eyes dilate, and he finally finds his focus.
Okay. Approved.
I sold it? I sold it! Yes! I'm gonna sell so many chairs.
Jordan, what the f was that? We just lived a fever dream. I have no idea what just happened, and we approved it.
What kind of anime butts we talking? What kind of anime butts we talking?
You broke me.
That's right. Go to needforseat.com, or if you're in the US, you can just go to needforseatusa.com and pick yourself up a SMITE Maxonomic chair. Make sure you use code SMITEMAX when you do so to make sure. I can't even remember what the code does. I think it was a free embroidery to make sure that you can get everything going. It is a very comfortable chair. You saw us sitting over there in one. I was no shot lounging. I did the inhibitor that lets you lean back all the way.
Is that what that's
and,
called? That's
I
such
have
an
no
official
idea.
name.
It feels right?
That sounds like the name, that's like a Halo name. You know, like Halo
The
name
inhibitor.
is so over the top all the time. Like, yeah, here's how do I lean back my chair? Oh, you mean your inhibitor? Like, no.
the lever that stops you from leaning back too far, I
Yeah.
hit the thing so I could lean back further while we were watching. I felt kind of like sitting in a movie theater watching SMITE, which is something I want to do, which is something we've done in the past. I know we've had some co-sponsors with the Worlds. Either way, hey, go get a SMITE Maxonomic chair, and you'll be able to lounge around and be happy and relaxed as well. Of course, we do need to look at what is going to happen. You just saw the Titans take a 2-0 victory over the Valkyries, and we're going to be moving forward to the Bolts taking on the Kings. This is going to be a very important matchup for both of these teams. As you just saw in the standings, and you'll see here again in a second, this is an important matchup for fighting for those top 2 spots. A lot closer than I think a lot of these teams would have anticipated. Whether it is the Kings or the Bolts who get a win, somebody else will tie the Titans at 3-1. And depending on how the Leviathans set goes tomorrow against the Bolts, but also over the next couple of weeks, they could also end up at 3-1. So a lot of things that could change. And I think if the Kings win here, and then the Bolts win tomorrow, you'll have a bunch of teams at 3-1. The Bolts, I think, would then be at 3-2. And that just causes a whole jumble that's up towards the top. And so it makes things very important. Of course, if the Bolts win, they get a step closer to being in the top 2. And Aggro, that's kind of where we're at right now. These Kings-Bolts matchups have been really, really hot. When the Kings were looking really fresh and really warm, the Bolts were still able to find a win over them while they were in their hot streak there in Phase 2. And the last time we saw them was the Kings beating the Bolts and ending that streak.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch these two teams in particular go back and forth because the Bolts, I think it's pretty obvious how much they wanted to get that win streak and set the new record, and the Kings being the ones to end that was certainly a surprise, but maybe not that much of a surprise if you've been watching the Camelot Kings all year because this team just seems to have an extra gear that they're able to hit from every few sets. The problem is whenever it's not every single set. So whenever the thing about this team is that they're so creative and they're so ready to do things differently than every other team that sometimes they might get a little too cute, a little too complicated. But in those moments where they're doing the things and they're figuring out new metas and all that kind of stuff, they'll set metas for other teams to have to follow if they want to have any shot of being able to compete, because they are that talented. I'm always very impressed with the way this team thinks about the game. It's a team that's super fun to watch. It's just a matter of which version of the Kings you're going to get on a given day. And this is a blanket statement forever. I hope it's the good version, because the good version of the Kings is really fun to watch.
And they are very solid. Variety, admittedly, has been one of the biggest pickups. I think we got to see a little bit of Variety last year, and things were fine when he was playing actually with this Bolts roster as opposed to Haddix, but it didn't quite seem to click the same way that it does playing with everybody else in EU. Of course, he's playing from over here and has been doing incredibly well. In fact, we have Variety standing by for an interview. And Variety, I mean, we got a little bit of your thoughts about this during the Kings Media Day, but looking at this patch right now, how's Solo feeling? We've seen just a couple of changes.
I think Solo's in a pretty good spot right now. I think there's a lot of Guardians which you can play there, as well as like, for example, like last week they were playing Terra Solo. I think that's getting a bit too greedy for the current state of the meta. So I think when people start getting super greedy in Solo, you can start bringing out picks like King Arthur and Wukong. And I mean, we've seen it already, like Nika playing Amaterasu. So yeah.
Well, I know last week you guys just ended a win streak that the Titans had going for them. Just before that, though, your last matchup against this Bolts team was not only ending their win streak, but also, I believe, gave you first seed in phase number 2. Do you have any thoughts about this matchup since it's been so back and forth this year?
Not really, honestly. I think we've had the upper end of most of our games. I think that the sets that we've lost, we've been on the we haven't had a good grasp on the meta. And that could be like similar to today. You know, there's a big patch where, you know, jungle items got buffed. The people playing Ul, people tried double ADC mid. So maybe we get caught off guard or something like that today, but I doubt it. If it's a normal game of Smite, I think we'll win.
That's actually relating to last week. I know Twig in his post-game interview said that he got carried that game. And I was just kind of curious, how are the experiments in the jungle going so far? Do you think Twig or Lasber's is going to have the leg up?
I don't know what to say about that. I mean, we'll let the gameplay do the talking.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
We'll keep our eyes on Twig and see how it goes. Hey, man, thanks for joining me, and of course, good luck in your games, and thanks for your time.
Cheers.
A good one to be able to end it on. A nice little chuckle there. I don't know if that's a good chuckle or a bad chuckle. We'll figure it out, I guess, as he said, in the gameplay. But Variety seems to be pretty solidly, at least a good grasp on what this meta is, but he thinks that if anything goes wrong, that's going to be where the problems show up.
Yeah, I mean, the way that this team has set meta in the past, whenever everyone else is trying to work on it, this is where it's most volatile. So, you know, if they're thinking it's going to go one way and it ends up being another way that's a little bit stronger, then they could end up looking a little bit worse than they typically would.
And Haddix is the person he's going to have to jump over in order to find this victory. And having just mentioned that there are a lot of Guardians, but that you can easily pick up something like a King Arthur if you so want to or so please. That's a pick that might actually be contested in this set because it's something that we saw Haddix play a couple of times last week, but also has been a very kind pick to the Bolts. I really do think anything that allows the one side of the map to feel a little more comfortable than the other is going to be what opens the door for Lasber's success as well as Twig's success, right? Both of these solo laners have a really big matchup because as long as they aren't suffering and don't desperately need a gank, the jungler can look elsewhere and try and farm up wherever they want.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the two god pools between these solo laners is certainly similar. I don't think you're going to see Haddix playing Hell anytime soon, as Variety has, but the Sobek, we saw it for both of these guys in the highlights.
Yeah.
Arthur, any opportunity Haddix gets to play King Arthur, he's going to take. But Variety oftentimes the same way, a big King Arthur player. So always excited to see this lane matchup. I think that Haddix has made us all forget that he's a rookie this year with how well that he's played. And that's a good testament to the way he's played.
And that's just another good testament to the way the Bolts have been performing all around this year. Again, this is a team that hasn't quite been able to win any of the playoffs. They get taken out of the playoffs by the Dragons in Phase 1, despite being the first seed, and then as second seed, taken out by the Leviathans there in Phase 2, which, admittedly, if you're looking at track records, mean they're just perfectly on par to be able to go and win Worlds, right? Because you aren't allowed to win either of those, I think, and get the World Championship, at least from what we've seen in years past. Probably since, well, there's got to be some gaps in there before NRG just dominated everything that they happen to play. We'll see how they're going to be able to handle this, but that is a big deal. I mean, the Bolts, what was on a really big streak, I think are also taking a mentality of just kind of relaxing.
Is that how you hold a spoon, Gore? Am I?
Well, I got to see him. Was he holding it like?
It was, yeah, it was kind of like, it was fist down.
It was also, and very, like, rigid.
I've never seen someone hold a spoon that way. And I'm going to be honest, it intimidated me a little bit.
That's how he gets
I hope
in
the
his
Kings
opponent's
weren't watching, because I'd see that and be like, oh my God, this guy, who knows what if he's capable of using a spoon like that, Lord knows what else he's capable of.
Well, he's capable of a whole lot given the right kind of picks. We'll see what they're able to do. It's munch time for the Bulls. What time is it? It's 3 o'clock.
All the
guys.
time.
Just,
It is all
the
Barra
time.
is always munching, dude. He never stops.
He's so skinny, though. How does he do it?
I don't know.
Is this the same thing Katie does? I
Well,
don't
it's
understand.
plain bread. He's not munching on anything
Look,
else.
well,
It's plain bread.
And it's not like, it's like multi-grain, like wheat
Yeah,
bread. Like,
wheat
he's
bread,
not
yeah.
using, like, just white bread that's, like, mostly sugar and, like, even if you get the good brand, is 70 calories a slice. Like, I guess, but even still, you have to eat 100, no,
Yeah,
10 of those
You have to eat a lot.
to
Well,
get a lunch.
And he might at this rate, honestly.
We'll see. I guess if it empowers them. I was thinking about whatever Jake was eating. Curious about that. It was out of a little tub. Either way, it's going to be Kepri Sylvanas bands up at the top for the Bolts. Something that I would imagine only works right now against the Bolts and the Kings. You missed maybe a little bit of that last week when the Kings were able to help turn that around on the Scarabs themselves. The Kings here are going to be banning the Morrigan and Odin. Those feel a lot more typical from what we've started to expect.
I mean, teams have pretty consistently tried to ban out genetics. That's been a pretty popular strategy up against the Camelot Kings this year, and has not found that much success. So, interested that the Bolts go back to it. The thing that has really kind of changed the tide back towards teams going up against the Kings has been ROM bans up against Netrioid, but how good is ROM now that these nerfs to the bows have come through, the maces have been buffed? I mean, is he still a priority pick? Looks like maybe not. The Bolts let it through. They triple banned genetics, and then the Kings banned Geb, which is where I was expecting a pick to go here. I was thinking, does Jake play Geb with the differences in style that we've seen? And you can't let Big Man Tings get Tiamat. I didn't watch last week, but I heard plenty about it, so that makes sense to me.
You only need to hear once that a Tiamat got a quadra kill and won a game, and that tends to solidify it for you. I was curious about what the King's response was going to be. Tiamat, a very good first pick, but Yamoja's been very kind to Jake in the past as well, still available. And I was wondering if this was going to be something like Yamoja plus Hell, which notably could have been a very, very strong and overpowering composition for the Kings. But it is Rom and Raijin. And Raijin might have a little bit of shakiness, although that 71% win rate in the SBL this phase tends to speak otherwise. The Rom is hands down one of the best performers for Netrioid.
Yeah, by far. It's his best god by a mile. And that's why teams have consistently taken it away from him. This tells me that the Bolts think that build that Rom is going to go, assuming he goes the Ichabal, Odysseus bow style of build, that build isn't very good right now, because otherwise I don't see a reason to give him this pick. I mean, the difference between Netrioid on Rom, where he looks like the best hunter in the league at times, and on not Rom, where he looks worse than that by a lot, being kind, is night and day. So this tells me some, if I'm a competitor, if I'm looking at the Bolts, I'm a different team, I'm on the Kings, I'm trying to theory craft how we would play against them or something like that, then that would be my takeaway, is that they don't value that build very much. And then we can use that to try and predict what types of gods they do value for Barracuda and ADC. If they don't think that build is good, then they're probably not going other hunters that think that would like that build. They're going to go more ability-centric hunters or things of that nature.
Well, I know so far we've seen like a few Hu-Yis if we're looking at it. I think actually Barra has played Jing Wei into this matchup with some marginal success. But I'm going to throw out this Hu-Yi, which is, I think, of the last 6 games that he's been locked in, including that last one. He has not won them. Last week he did not win a single game. And so with the one win he does have, I think this phase is from a couple weeks ago now. With Fafnir locked in on the side of the Kings alongside the Raijin and the Rom, this feels like something that makes a lot of sense for the way they tend to play, which is very strictly, if Twig right now is experimenting in the jungle and trying to kind of get some of these assassins that are more quote-unquote meta under his feet, put the carry hands for Tings, give them over to Netrioid, like allow the rest of the team to kind of carry it up, so despite whatever might happen, whether Twig has a great game or not, you still have some win conditions.
Exactly, and I think that, if you showed me this Kings draft, I'd be like, all right, great, why are you showing this Kings draft from 2 weeks ago? Because this is exactly the same things that they were picking then. And the bans outside of this Geb, very, very similar as well. So not a lot of adjustment right now from the Camelot Kings, but I don't really mind that in game 1. of a set like this where you aren't really sure of the meta. Let's just go to things that we know have worked for us in the past, and then we can adjust from there afterwards. But I do think that this is, I'm surprised at how little variation we're seeing right now from mostly the Kings. The Nike pick is a little bit different there for the Bolts.
Also feels like a very similar just color palette on that side of the screen, which admittedly, like, I see a lot of purple themed throughout of it, which makes sense. They're the Kings, look at their colors. So it ultimately goes that way. Raven, that gets locked in right there. Something we saw Twig play last week with some marginal success, and we've been seeing a little bit more of over the last couple of weeks as well. But admittedly, before this, I mean, I'm thinking Cuvo, Scary D really were the only two that were highly playing him. And I can't remember if it was an SCC. It must have been SCC yesterday where we saw him even thrown into the solo lane.
Yeah, I think Raven is okay. He's just an assassin that survives really well. He uses maces. You know, he can go full offense. It doesn't feel too bad. I think that overall, Raven is never, I only want Raven in situations where I'm like, man, I really need multiple forms of CC immunity in order to survive as an assassin on my dive. I don't really see that for what the Bolts have, but you're not going to hear me complaining about Raven very often.
Someone who was 100% pick ban last week, I completely forgot about. Artio makes it through all 10 of the bans and 7 of the picks before finally getting locked in there for the solo lane for the Bolts. Looks like that's going to be going up against the Cerberus. Cerberus has good anti-heal. Typically, this is the kind of matchup you want, but yeah. Artio has been a powerhouse lately, and even though she lost at both games last week, it does feel like something that you're going to have to handle.
Yeah, I think that this is a good counter matchup, but we've seen her handle this counter matchup the last few weeks, so it doesn't really concern me for Haddix. The Nike jungle is interesting to me. I mean, a couple of years ago, Nike jungle was really meta. She does do decent damage when built full damage, full offense, rushing Jotuns, Crusher, Erendite. She does do a good amount of damage, but I'm still not super sold on this pick in general. I think that Nike is good. Her win rate tells me that, but I think she's probably better in solo than in jungle. Feels like the Bolts might have gotten a little bit too cute, but at the same time, I mean, I'm looking at their draft. You've got really good backline between the Tiamat and the Chernobog. You've got a staunch front line between the Emoja and the Artio, and now the Nike that can kind of flex between both of those things. I think it's solid for the Bolts, but I'm not really sure how well this Nike jungle is going to perform.
Yeah, that's always a wild question mark that you have to throw out there. For Lazara as well, just because of the way things have been the last couple of weeks, trying to see if they're going to get their feet back under them. I will say, though, last week, one of the matchups Artio lost was against the Kings, and it was against this Cerberus that got banned the second game they played it. So this is a good matchup, at least that Variety has had to experience against the Titans. And I can't think of much better experience than having to practice it against Benji, of all people. So you're really comfortable, at least there. Your jungle matchup seems like it's going to falter, maybe just slightly, but the Tiamat, Emoja, Nike were their top 3 in one of their sets last week, and that's a very solid top 3 for the Bolts.
Absolutely. Strong. You got everything you need. The Kings have gotten everything they need. I mean, both these compositions, these are just good old-fashioned Smite comps. There's nothing super special about either one. They all do things well through the early game, through the mid game, and through the late game. Not a lot of objective secure, but that's been the meta in mid for a long time now. You're looking more to burn, but in that instance, I think I'd favor the Kings over the Bolts. I think that Tiamat, one of the weaker mages at putting out DPS on objectives. Overall, I don't think either team is feeling bad about their draft, and I don't think either team is like, yeah, we killed it. They got what they got some good stuff on both sides, and it's going to come down entirely to in-game execution.
That's maybe the best place to be in for these teams. They've played 3 times so far this year. The sets go in favor of the Kings. We'll see if the Bolts are going to be able to tie that up. Let's see how it shakes out in Phase 3 here in Game 1.
It's going to be a big one for both of these teams because they are trying to fight for that number 2 slot at the moment. The Atlantis Leviathans do hold the top of the standings as J-Mac and Mifflin with Doug as our cameraman for this matchup. And looking at it, the Artio, which has been 100% pick ban so far here in the SPL, does sneak its way through on this draft, and it ends up putting a Nike in the jungle, Mifflin, something we don't see too often anymore. Usually she has been more accustomed to that solo lane.
Yeah, I'm actually a pretty big fan of Nike inside the jungle. Generally, though, when I see a lot of fruition from this pick, it is generally the Mannequin Scepter into the Hidden Blade Heartseeker kind of tactical nuke style, and Lazarus still certainly can go for a very high damage output build, but with Bumbas, won't have that exact blink in, just press ult, and one-shot potential, or at least great backline disruption potential that he could have had with that build, something that we've seen Sanford Soccer go for a lot in the past. But Nike still does have Great jungle clear, good poke inside the lane, decent CC. The knock up into slows feels very good. I don't share the same concerns Aggro did on the desk.
Bear is feeling a little bit of the wrath of the Kings here in this duo lane, even this Umoja. Not enough to give them entire pressure, though enough to at least push them forward. Variety has to deal with this RTO now that, again, has managed to slip through the picks and bans and be 8th picked overall when this guy was a first pick, first ban for pretty much the entirety of the early portion of Phase 3, even in towards the playoffs and the latter half of Phase 2. So seeing it come through, though it does have 100% loss rate so far in the games that she has made it through.
Yeah, you know, it's just so fun to see these standard Smite drafts again, right? Especially coming off of that last set now. We're getting a little bit more so in realm with what we had projected the meta look like, and so far both of these teams come away with very strong drafts in their own right. I'm keeping my eyes on Captain Twig, though. It's the pick that Aggro highlighted, and this Robin really does have a lot of weight behind it. Needs to do well inside of the early game so they can hit the ground running, act as that bridge for this Raijin and this Rom to really start to hit their pace.
I think it's a matchup that really everybody's keeping eyes on and kind of got alluded to during the waiting room segment, where when it comes down to these two teams, it's all going to be, well, maybe not all, but a lot of it is going to come down to how do these junglers really perform up in this new metas. Both these junglers have kind of been struggling in it. Captain Twig kind of highlighted at the end of his little matchup last week against the Titans that he kind of got carried a little bit by the rest of his team. But, I mean, when you have big man teams popping off on a Tiamat, it's no surprise you'd be kind of comfortable sitting in the backpack. Lasbra trying to get some big poke on Variety, pushes him to near death, but Variety able to slip out by the nature of that Tier 1 tower being there as a deterrent factor. Haddox will try and zone Captain Twig away from this blue buff steal that's going on. He'll be successful in maintaining that one for his team, so no blue buff for the Bolts.
That's huge for Twig, who is already benefiting from an XP advantage on Lasbra. Comes into that blue buff defense at level 4, and Lasbra sitting at level 3. And Twig, very healthy at this point, great survivability. Thanks to that overhead kick, can keep up this aggression and try and slow down this jungle clear, buy some time for Variety to rotate back in.
Captain Twig may have walked a little too far forward. He'll meet the Nanu in the jungle, and he'll eat that Minotaur minion, take a little bit of extra poke, and that'll allow the blue buff to go the way of the Bolt. So they're unsuccessful in stealing away blue, but they can at least make sure to secure theirs thanks to that early rotation from Ven. Big man teams on the Raijin, two gods that are pretty much the hot topic right now, and maybe that way continuing until we do see some of those nerfs come through for both of them. Tiamat and Raijin both very successful in their mid lanes, the top two mages, as Paul highlighted in our pregame interview with Titans. And I don't think we're going to see them go anywhere in the next couple of weeks.
No, these guys just have so much damage output. The early game maybe a little bit more so lacking from Tiamat, but the early game of Raijin incredibly strong, and then they both have very good late game team fight presence, so keep your eyes on them. Worth noting though, Tiamat might have the scaling advantage. I still think that she is just so versatile as a pick, has ton of damage output, can leap in aggressively, almost act as that pseudo frontliner, and if you're really struggling in these late game neutral objective dances, you can at least utilize those lizards to split push a little bit and force somebody from the other side to address that. So the Camelot Kings got to keep their eyes on Ven in particular going forward, and as of right now, Ven's been allowed to free farm. I don't expect that to change anytime soon. Sure, Robin has great survivability and great die, but as far as the 1v1 matchup goes up against Tiamat, once you overhead kick to avoid that stun, I mean, that's generally the end of your aggression on this Robin.
Especially when these Tiamat builds have been kind of leaning more towards cooldown reduction over anything, 30-40%. We'll hold that. Nitroid, and, well, no real danger. He was able to just walk right out of those waves. Awesome Jake just uses the ultimate and doesn't get a whole lot from it. But these mid lane Tiamats have been seeing a little bit more cooldown, usually 30 or 40%. So yeah, if you can overhead kick one stun, well, don't worry, about 6 seconds later it'll be another one. Big man Tings has to go on the Tycho drums out of range from the damage of Ven and uses those drums to push Lasbra back. He's low, but Lasbra is still on the hunt. Big man is not going to be safe under this tier 2 tower. You better bet that Lasbra's going to dive right in. The barrier formation gets the kill, but the minions and Netroid clean him up right after.
Man, Jake was so close by. Had Lasbra given him just a little bit more space, could have backed up for the heal. Haddox, though, surrounded by 3, trying to defend blue.
He's got Barracuda coming in with the ultimate. Our root comes out. Variety low on mana. He's got to run. It's an ult away from Captain Twig, and Genetics leap out. But the continued engagement from the Bolts may not be able to catch them out in time. Variety gets a little bit of his mana back, but Haddox has caught him out. The root comes through. It's successful in locking him in, but the beads from Variety make sure that he can leap out of that cripple field.
Losing out of the defensive relic does not feel good. Good utilization of the global ultimate from Barracuda to rejoin his team on the right-hand side, try and swing that fight back in favor of his boy Haddix, and he does so very well here. Now Variety going to play very safe inside of that lane while he waits for his beads to come back up. Big man Tings loses out on his bead just a moment ago as well, so 100 seconds left on Raijin's Relic, which means that the Olympus Bolts, well, they can't do any wrong.
Lasbra looping around the back. The Ren deals some decent damage to Variety and Genetics, but not enough. Lasbra won't be able to get any kills there, but with this heavy rotation towards the right side, it leaves that Scorpion open, and the Kings will immediately grab that one just after the 6-minute mark, and with the Oracle Harpies, they'll have vision on that Gold Fury for whoever it spawns in the next 30 seconds.
It's only 2 kills, 6.5 minutes in, but it feels like a breakneck pace from both of these teams. A lot of action across the board, and it's net the Camelot Kings about 1,000 gold in their favor. Experience largely equalized, though. No real large disparities, barring the solo lane Variety. 2 levels up over Haddix. It's a counter matchup that the desk highlighted, and already Variety, oh, I think he's out of the thick of it. He's feeling just fine on this Cerberus.
So far out of the fire, but how will the rest of the team deal with it? Genetics misses the stun against Awesome Jake, trying to look for a red buff invade, but they won't find anything there. They'll just find a Dragon Man throwing some hammers around the field. Both mid laners have their Chronos Pendant and their Conduit Gems online, so I mean we're going to have a decent amount of CDR between them. A lot of abilities can fly. Genetics going for a purple buff invade, and he'll be successful in taking that one away, though he has the green buff, so he can't pick it up. Be a nice easy prize if Nitro decides to walk over towards it, but instead it'll just be right back to the lanes for both.
Yeah, the Camelot Kings are doing such a good job of just keeping pressure up wherever they can. I like this ideology of Genetics sitting inside the dual lane, just making sure that the aggression is rooted there, simply to keep Barracuda from utilizing that ultimate to cross the entirety of the map. But with Genetics sitting there so much, kind of weakens the 2v2 or 3v3 in mid.
Veneno here looking like he wants to maybe try and secure this mid-Harpy camp, but it is gone already. A leap in from Lasbra, and the barrier comes out, but only to make sure that Tings and Twig do not continue any further forward. So mid-camps go to the Kings. This 1,000 gold lead may go even further.
Jeez.
Barracuda gets caught, has to use the dash. Nitroid goes in, and the Riptide may have just slowed down Nitroid enough. Jake and Barra both managed to make it out.
Man, if that Riptide were just a little bit off the mark, 2-3 more auto attacks from Netroid could have set him up for a position where Astral Barrage might have been able to pick up a kill onto Barracuda, or at least able to strip that ultimate and force him to use it for the damage immunity. But instead, the Camelot Kings take the small win with Poke, but it is exactly that, just a small win.
Lasbra with the ultimate, looking for a couple of them. Twig is in danger. He'll get hit with last hit of the Ren and be forced to walk away. Haddix will get a stun against Variety, but not much more beyond there as the Raiju lands on top of Haddix's head. He'll immediately use that dash to get away. A little fight over the Scorpion, and at the end of the day, it does go the King's way.
Man, I'm getting whiplash trying to follow all these fights all over the map. Camelot Kings and Olympus Bolts aiming for each other's necks as Netroid takes a lot of damage.
Netroid is trying for a boxing match, and it's Awesome Jake who throws out the Moonblast. Will
Woo!
catch it, but he needs one more auto to fall down. Not going to be it this time. Barracuda, he may be looking for blood, goes up,
No
crashes
shots.
down immediately, gets the ult out of Netroid. Going to need all 3 snipes and even more to save his life. Barracuda will toss down the crystal, but the basic is what will end the day. Awesome Jake there for the assist, and Genetics has to sit by as his Hunter falls.
The Bolts are allowed to make that play because of the ruckus happening inside the jungle. Ven and Lasbra acting as goaltender, keeping Twigs and Ting at bay.
Big man Ting's going up with the ultimate. Tycho drums, Venenu walks in aggressively. The last one fears them away, and Genetics is the one in danger. As the consume hits, Lasbra leaps in, the barrier for damage, and a Moonblast just off the mark. Genetics able to get over the wall and save the life of his mid and jungle.
Not before Big Man Ting takes a little bit more damage just on his rotation back in. 3-man grouping from the Olympus Bolts around the Gold Fury may have been an opportunity to pull it out, but instead the Oracle's going to be where they set their eyes and they take it down very easily. The Camelot Kings, though, despite losing out on that engagement, a little bit of an invade going the way of the Olympus Bolts, still sit comfortably with a 1,500 gold and experience lead. The Kings doing a great job just farming the map.
And right now, a lot of it is in Variety and Captain Twig. Both of them have a little over a level each in favor. And Variety may want even more. He'll pull back. Haddix is a double stun out of the bear and a nice little heal to make sure that Haddix has a little bit more health. He'll dash in and immediately cancel his own dash, gets rooted out, but Lasbra's back, drops the ultimate. Captain Twig now might be the one in danger. He leaps away, but the root comes out from Haddix and will be enough to take him down. Variety leaps in looking for Lasbra, but he makes it back under the tower. The bolts come out with one.
It's so hard to shut down an RDO inside the lane. The amount of self-sustain is just so hard to deal with. Heals up throughout the entirety of the burst. Sure, the dash gets canceled by the root thanks to Robin. Captain Twig holds on to that ability, trying to catch out that dash away, but it is not enough to find the kill. The damage output, not enough. Now that Twig has finally made his way back to base, unfortunately for him, inside of a body bag, at least able to pick up that Brawler's beat stick, so maybe subsequent ganks up against Haddix have a chance to go a little bit better.
Just a lot of healing coming from this RTO early, and it's a lot of just the base values keeping them up. Later as that game goes, that heal won't be as potent, but always making sure to try and answer to the healing against this RDO. I'm surprised we haven't seen a Divine Ruin come out just yet, but maybe only putting a little bit as far as the anti-heal goes to try and deal with this bear. Big Man Tings goes back and he picks up tier 1 of his book so he can start working towards that Soul Reaver, Soul Gem online for both the mid laners. An equal build so far across the board for them.
Yeah, just looking to shore up their burst damage a little bit. Both Tiamat and Raijin have great consistent damage. It's kind of spread out over their abilities. The Taiko drums, kind of 4 pieces. The first ability from Big Man Tings as well, going to be set out in small bursts, and the same could be said of Ven's Tiamat. So items like Soul Gem, like Soul Reaver really add up in a big way to help you out shutting down someone off initial burst of CC. So it makes sense to me that they elect to build this path.
Slightly new development in the Hunter builds. We've been seeing some of the ability Hunters come back, and we've been seeing what they like to run, the Transcendence, then a bunch of Maces. We've even seen the bow build kind of make its changes throughout after some of the items received its nerf, and now we're seeing this Iqbal Aussie start here by Netroid on the ROM, so getting a little bit of sustain kind of back in, because for a little while we didn't really see a whole lot of sustain in Hunter builds.
No, an Aussie plus Hunter's Cal gives you a fair deal, a percentage lifesteal, the passive as well, going to afford you a lot of survivability, and Ikavale having no penetration inside of it on its own means that Aussie should help you out down that path a little bit. Barracuda, on the other hand, is not lacking for penetration. Crusher immediately into Aussie means that he's going to be shredding the front line of the Camelot Kings, but is going to have a much harder time in the actual 1v1 up against Netroid.
Jake gets stunned. The Oracle Harpy split 1-1 between the teams. Jake takes a decent bit of poke, and now Venenu might be the one in trouble. Variety walks forward, throws the breath, but not much more there. Genetics will back up after eating a volley of damage from Venenu. And it looks like it's a small retreat here by the Kings, just making sure to try and get some vision control over that Gold Fury.
Take a peek at Twig's relic selection. No beads for Robin this game. The Assassin going to be playing with Phantom and Blink. It's just there to deal with the walls from Awesome Jake 408. Going to be helping out the rest of your team, and is going to be nice, but that means if he is affected by CC at any point and his overhead kick is down, it means he's probably going to go down pretty quickly right afterwards. So Captain Twig, he's going to have to play nearly perfect in these late game team fights.
Barrow will take the Draugr, so that means they'll get a little bit of a buff should those tier 1 tower dives come through from the Kings, which is where a lot of the action has been. It's been around these tower lines. Jake might need some extra help. Stunned immediately after the Riptide, but it still stays for quite some time, so Jake's able to utilize it and walk right back through and get some extra bump back towards his side of the map. As far as his build goes, he's going to some very early power and pen himself, looking towards maybe another Spear of Desolation that we've been seeing. Some of these emojis like the Flex Swords, I think he even did it last week against the Valhalla Valkyries in 1 or 2 games.
Yeah, that damage output just feels so nice, having a little bit of that CDR built into your kit, giving a little bit of a boost as well. So makes sense to me that Jake wants to have a little bit of additional damage, maybe remembering when that Moonstrike did not finish off Netroid, does not want to see a repeat of that one. But the Camelot Kings, yet again, with superior macro play, net themselves a Pyromancer and push themselves even further in the lead, despite not winning out on any of these team fights.
It's almost 2,500 gold that the Kings have built, and it's just from farming alone, because the fights, you can see the kill counts in favor of the Bolts. They're up 3-1, but the Kings are just taking the farm across the board. 2,500 gold, 2,100 experience, a lot of that from that solo lane. Even Captain Twig, despite how he hasn't really been very active on the map, despite the fact he's been a little bit lower on the player damage charts, Captain Twig has been keeping his farm game up. He is 2 levels over Lasbra.
And he's hit a pretty significant power spike and has another one coming very soon. So expect Twig to start getting involved the second that he can, as we see a little bit of a skirmish inside of the duo lane. I thought we might have seen a heavier commit from Awesome Jake onto Netroid, but instead Barracuda says, hey man, Let's play a little bit further back here. No reason to rush it. If we lose out on this fight, could very easily lose out on a Gold Fury, but the Camelot Kings, they don't want to win the fight first. They're already grouped up.
Variety pushing some of them back so his team can start up the Gold Fury, but Jake is here, Rivera right behind him, and now that Haddix is rotated over, they've gotten some of their extra
Good
front line,
Lord.
but Jake is getting chunked out by this Raijin. So much damage coming from this mid laner. That Soul Reaver online, you can already see the damage he's able to put out with it. Even Lasbra started to get chunked a little bit by Variety on the Cerberus.
Yeah, Variety is a menace at this point. His damage output is so nice. His ability to burn away those beads means that the Olympus Bolts have to respect the position that he generates. But now, the Bolts given a small opportunity to pull the Gold Fury themselves.
Gold Fury down to half. Variety and Genetics pushing in. Netroid right behind, but the Gold Fury's not falling down very quick. Instead, it's the fight after that they're losing. Haddix,
Rip.
he gets chunked down. The River's Rebuke too late. Variety picks up one with the ult and throws Jake back into their clutches, but Lasbra is hunting for Variety. He'll find one and a leap in. Well, then Venenu will get another one. Awesome Jake credit to Barracuda pumping out autos, but
Good
he's out of
Aegis.
mana, and Twig will dive right on top of him and take him down.
Lazarus trying to keep up the fight. Rend is good, but Ben needs a little bit more help than that. Has to run away against the dragon form of Genetics.
Transformation in, and that will be a good confirmation. A full deicide for the Camelot Kings, and finally getting their toes in the water on the kill department. Now up 6-5, and a Gold Fury as their prize after the fight.
Haddix just playing a little bit too far forward, and the Olympus Bolts playing with a little bit too much confidence, pulling that Gold Fury themselves despite playing at such a large deficit. Now with the fight and the objective going the way of the Camelot Kings, this lead that was paltry, that was small and built up and by piecemeal, just small camps across the map, has now ballooned out closer to 4,000 in favor of the Chaos team 17 minutes in. The Olympus Bolts by no means are out of it right now, but take a peek at their relics, man. That was an expensive engagement to lose every single set of beads down. The majority of ultimates still down for the Olympus Bolts, and looking at the Camelot Kings, doesn't seem like they even had to break a sweat, man, and just about every set of beads still available.
All the beads, both sets of Aegis on the carries, even the Phantom Veil fully upgraded, still up for Captain Twig. They can take another fight if they want to. The only relics up on the side of the Bolts is going to be that Blink, and it will be that Bracer, and Jake may need more than just those to get him out.
Yikes.
Netroid and the Tycho Drums take down Awesome Jake. Another kill for the Kings, and now they're pushing up this mid lane, maybe trying to take this tier 1 tower.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's going to be much of a force from the Bolts to try and slow this one down. It's just the Tiamat in range, and, well, Ben's showing us that he's not interested in putting up a defense here. Tier 1's mid tower is going to fall down, but where the Camelot Kings headed afterward, maybe the Tier 2 Variety's deep.
Maybe just Lasbra. He's down to half health just from Variety alone. Tier 2 in danger.
There's
Barracuda ults in and immediately dashes right back out because Haddix gets chunked out. That Sunder slamming away his health bar, reducing those protections, and Genetics up in the dragon form. Might be looking just to continue this surge up the mid lane. Tier 2 in danger as Netroid and Ting swing away at it with their basics.
Man, who can stop Variety in these fights? Feels like he's just walking in and saying, hey man, you're not going to get to my back line, tell you what, and if you try, maybe I just kill you all on my own. This Cerberus is a menace right now, generating infinite space for the Camelot Kings, and that's all off the back of the 408 getting picked out in mid. Not only do you lose your Tier 1, but you lose your Tier 2, you lose the defensive positioning around the Fire Giant, and you lose a massive lead. The Camelot Kings now looking at nearly 7,000 in their favor, and nowhere for the Olympus Bolts to retreat to if they lose out on an engagement around this Fire Giant. The Camelot Kings are in great position.
But if the Bolts notice the Kings go back to base, or too many of them, maybe they can try and pull this Pyromancer that's just respawned, but nobody's really positioned around it just yet. It's only Awesome Jake really on this side of the map with Venenu, and they're not really looking towards that objective. It's back up on the map. It'd be a perfect time for them to have taken it, but they sit around just a little bit too long, and the Camelot Kings can now take complete control on this side. Lasbra, he'll spot out a ward and make sure and de-ward that. And now it's Captain Twig versus Barracuda, the 1v1. Barracuda, he gets the Aussie proc now. It's all just coming down to the basic damage, and it's Captain Twig who has to run away. Barra closing the gap, needs one more auto, but Jake is one who grabs it, and Netroid with the snipes finds him. Only needs a couple to take him down.
Twig may not have gotten the kill on his own, but he at least sets up for Netroid to find the return onto Barracuda, and it makes sense to me that Twig doesn't try to utilize that ultimate to finish off that kill. Barracuda had the Aegis available, no shot.
Haddix in the middle of 4. Big man Tings up on the Tycho Drums, pulls him right back to his doom. A kill for the mid laner, and a bit of CC to try and help Netroid, but it's not enough. Venenu picks him up with the kill. Genetics in the transformation, looking for a target, will stun Benenu out, and the damage from Raiju, most of it immune out. Benenu living through, but for how much longer? The answer, not very much.
Look, man, that is still a hallmark look at how strong Tiamat is. She's surrounded by 3 members of the Camelot Kings playing at a deficit as well and still survives for an incredibly long time, but yet again, another team fight lost by the Olympus Bolts, and it is incredibly expensive for them. Those relics all down, Beads and Aegis expended by the majority of their carries, and the Fire Giant gonna be available. Pyromancer available as well. Only Fury spawning up in just under a minute. The Camelot Kings still playing with a massive advantage at this point, but keep your eyes on Barracuda. His damage output is incredibly strong at this point, actually going for that crit build, whereas Netroid has gone for a little bit more penetration inside of his. So Barracuda gonna have an advantage on shredding these neutral objectives and shredding carries alike.
He's going to throw out the crystal and get the combo for some extra attack speed, and doesn't seem there's too much answer on this Pyromancer just yet, except for Twig. He'll dive right in and he'll steal it away. Another objective goes the way of the Kings, but this time off one big steal. Variety looking for more, finds Barracuda and finds his beads. Jake stuck, uses the Riptide to get himself out. The stun stopped him for a moment, but he'll be able to get away with his life. But the Camelot Kings don't look like they're ready to give up. Variety goes right back in, stun misses, and Haddock stuck against the wall, surrounded by 3. How much longer can the bear live in the middle of everybody? And the Kings once more say not too long.
Here's the thing about a rock in a hard place. That's exactly where Haddox finds himself there, surrounded on all sides, a siege on all fronts, and now the Fire Giant being looked at. 22 minutes into this one, the Camelot Kings pull it out, and where are the bolts? Nowhere in range to defend.
Jake cannot even walk forward. The ward to make sure that he's spotted out. It's going to be a Fire Giant for the Kings. 11-7 on the kills. 7,000 gold in their favor, and will only be ever climbing with 3 more towers for them to take off the map, and all the pressure in the world to continue these pushes.
Oni Fury is being looked at by the Olympus Bolts, at least able to try and take out a consolation prize here, but that's going to be a slow siege for them. And meanwhile, what are the Kings doing? They're pushing down that tier 2 on right. If maybe Twig can stop some backs here, could be a Phoenix Siege attempt, but the Camelot Kings are not going to leave it up to chance. They find a couple of picks, they find a Fire Giant, they find a lot of gold inside of their pockets, and now going to head back to base and try and spend that one up. Captain Twig in particular, watch this power spike, 3,200 in hand. Yeah, let's get that serrated edge. Maybe we go for a little bit more penetration down that maze tree, finish up that Bumbas, and feeling pretty good.
Tycho drums and the Rivers of Butte come out. Barracuda's in danger, but the Riptide may be just enough to get them out. Third snipe does slam, and just that little bit of extra health and shield from Jake is enough for Barracuda to make his way out, but an expensive loss for them. That's Beads on Jake and Ultimate to get them both out.
Yeah, Beads on Jake, maybe not the biggest deal. I mean, maybe even acts as a little bit of a bait here for the Olympus Bolts. If the Camelot Kings say, hey, yo, Yamoja's beads are down, let's focus her, that's a little bit of space created for Barracuda and Vence. We'll see how this one pans out, but only 2 towers now standing between the Camelot Kings and the exposed birds of the Olympus Bolts. And with this deficit, with Fire Giant on 5 members, I don't think the Olympus Bolts even put up a soft defense on this tier 2. It's all going to come down to these Phoenixes, and it's all going to come down to just one team fight. If the Camelot Kings win this one, they win the game.
Well, they've still got this tower to shred through before they can start looking at those Phoenixes, and with Tiamat minions shoving up the mid lane, they're going to have to put a lot of attention before they want to go for that siege. Instead, it'll just be a retreat and a back from the Kings. They've still got almost 2 minutes left on this Fire Giant power play, so they have plenty of time to work with, maybe taking a little bit more time than they're comfortable with. They lose that tier 1 in solo, so that's a little bit of gold going the way of the Bolts, and that wave is pushed very far up. But just look how many Lizard minions have been sent up this mid lane. I count 4 just up there and another couple on the way.
Yeah, I mean, it'll get cleared out pretty quickly. Genetics can do it all on his own, but it was at least a nice ploy from the Olympus Bolts to buy themselves a little bit of time inside of mid. Yeah, it's a lot of lizards headed your way.
Just
but
the sound they make, just the crunching sound, that was terrifying to hear.
Yeah, not a huge fan of that one. Kind of reminds me of a scorpion or something along those lines. But the Olympus Bolts now have to rally themselves at these Phoenixes. It looks like it could be a split push attempt from the Camelot Kings, a 4-1 grouping with Captain Twig in mid, and already generating a lot of pressure here. Worth noting yet again, though, Captain Twig does not have beads, so inside the 1v1, any CC that comes his way should stick itself home. Looks like Twig might be looking for a Magi's Blessing, but at this pace, might not even get the opportunity to finish it.
Minute left on the Fire Giant power play. They sent 3 to this left side to look at the Phoenix, and 4 from the Bolts to defend it. Captain Twig by himself against Lazara. Variety rotates in. Stun off the mark by Ven. And a blink gets interrupted there, so Variety's ultimate doesn't find anybody, and that may be just enough for the Bolts to hold the Kings back.
Yeah, Stygian Torment is such a massive tool loss there. It looked like Variety got clipped by an Archer minion or something like that and gets his blink canceled out immediately, but still able to walk his way in there and create space the old-fashioned way.
Stun against Haddix. The Riptide comes through just for an extra little bit of defense. Variety jumps out. The Bird taking a decent chunk of damage, but not quite enough to fall down just yet. Variety, he'll walk back with the rest of the team. Big Man Tings will clear out the minions, and maybe the Kings can walk forward and try and get a little bit more. Awesome Jake takes about half of his health, but again, Variety leaping away. Haddix chunked down. The Tycho drums trying to pull the bear right back in, but the ults are separated.
Nice
the team fight gets separated. Captain Twig gets chunked out. He has to walk back, and Lazara picks him up on the retreat. Netrioid low. This could be a big hit for Venenu, who gets Netrioid, and Big Man Tings doesn't have enough mitigation, not enough healing in the world to save his life. Barracuda gets one. Genetics and Variety, the front line, the other one's left, but a huge Stygian Torment from Variety may have just saved at least one of their lives, or maybe saved them both.
Too little too late. The Olympus Bolts now sieging forward, and Variety, you are locked down. Good luck running away from an RDO.
Beads get him out of one cripple field, but he's right back in another. Stun holds him in place. Genetics is just trying to run and separate the fight, but Variety is fighting right back at them. Leaps on top of Ven. The spin comes out from the mid laner, and then this 3v1, and Lazara joining back in, makes it a 5v1, and finally will take down the solo laner.
The fact that Variety even put the threat of killing Venenu into my heart right there, I felt the fear for the Olympus Bolts, but a phenomenal base defense, not only maintaining their birds, but winning out on the engagement afterward is huge for the Bolts here. Variety's desync death going to put him in the grayscale for 40 seconds. Still 10 seconds left on Big Man Tings, and Fire Giant, it's going to be coming up very shortly here. If the Olympus Bolts are able to pick this one up, utilize this time while Variety is still dead, could be one way back into this game, and that's all off the back of one unfortunate misplay. Variety, that Stygian Torment on the Phoenix line may have cost you more than we could foresee.
Every frontliner everywhere feels that pain of accidentally being clipped by a minion, and now your blink goes off, your ultimate cast, because you probably have it on instacast for something like that, and he unfortunately loses out on the early part of that engagement. Still holds him off for a while, but Fire Giant is the target for the Bolts, or maybe it's just a fight. Variety back up and can start running back towards the rest of the fight. Jake will push them away with the Riptide, but the Fire Giant hasn't been fully started up just yet. A Bracer dropped down in the back just to give a little bit of extra power over towards this team. A fully upgraded Bracer, so they've also got that to act as a sentry ward if need be.
Primal Fury is up at this point, so either team, if they want to break the stalemate, could head over there and go for the easier of the two neutral objectives currently standing. But anyone that is brave enough to do so is not me. If you step away from this Fire Giant, could be an opportunity for the other side. Take a peek at Lazara all the way on the left-hand side of the map, seeing if maybe he can catch somebody lacking or headed for this red buff, but nobody from the Camelot Kings has broken formation as of now. So instead it is just a grouping around this Fire Giant, another dance that we've seen so often here in the SPL. Jake in mid, maybe in a little bit of trouble. Variety not going to use the ultimate this time. Would have just burned the beads from this Umoja.
Captain Twig walking forward, and it might just be the Primal Fury. That could be the answer for the Kings. Everybody's kind of scattering around this mid lane. Nobody's really wanting to commit to either side of the map. Last time the Fire Giant went the way of the Kings, and the Bolts responded by taking an Oni Fury. Now it's a Primal Fury that has spawned in, which would be a nice target for either team to have, but the biggest target on the map, the Fire Giant, a minute away from that enhanced state, and the Camelot Kings are probably more than happy with delaying this just a little bit. But how much longer will they delay? And ultimate from Variety finds two, gets a bead from Haddix. River's Rebuke comes through. Lazara diving in the backline, finds Netro and might be able to force the ultimate out of him.
Twig?
Big Man Tings has to go away, and Twig is caught in the middle of three. Not going to make it out. Venenu picks him up with the Consume. The snipes from Netro just off the mark, and it's now a 5v4, and it could turn in favor even more for the Bolts if Variety or Genetics get caught out. A quick leap from the Dragon gets Genetics out of danger, but the rest of the Bolts surge forward.
Ven, so healthy at this point, can do just about no wrong. That leap's going to be coming up very shortly if they'd elect to re-engage this one, but Captain Twig diving in with the ultimate there is a huge turning point inside of this fight. Maybe thought the rest of his team was right behind him, but great zoning from the front line of the Olympus Bolts keeps the Kings at bay, and Ven is doing it all on his own. He doesn't need to DPS the Fire Giant, instead just making sure no one for the Kings is comfortable enough to step up.
Who cares about hitting the Fire Giant when you can hit the enemy team and let the rest of your team take a Fire Giant? And 3 seconds in, it's an enhanced Fire Giant for the Olympus Bolts, and this game has completely turned back around. What was a near 8,000 to 10,000 gold lead that the Kings had just earlier on has dwindled down to barely even over a 2,000 lead with another 1,500 gold swing out. We are looking at a dead even game.
Once these tier 2s fall and the Primal Fury follows, that could be the Olympus Bolts sitting with their lead in their favor this time around. Enhanced Fire Giant means you don't have to concern yourself with minion waves anymore. The Olympus Bolts do not have to think about backdoor protection, and instead, with 5 members, Fire Giant on their belts, can shift their attention more so towards the actual engagement. Awesome Jake playing with fire here, very far forward. The Camelot Kings very deep on the Olympus Bolts side of the map, trying to set up an ambush here. Whoever is unfortunate enough from the Bolts to walk into this one, I don't care if it's Jake or it's Lazar, any of the tanks on the Bolts might just get shredded down.
It's a matter of, are there any wards that could spot them? I think they are standing on a blue ward right there, so I'm pretty sure every person on the Bolts sees what they're doing, and that's why you don't see anybody walking to that left side of the map. Big man in Variety, though, and they might spot Haddix here. Haddix walks forward. It's an ultimate from Variety.
Found
Will
him.
pick up the bear, but
Clips the
the
wall.
bear is doing just fine. The wall makes sure to hold Haddix back in place, and Jake is looping around the back, finds a double stun. Variety gets taken down. Venenu with the credit of the kill. The Rivers Rebuke to zone off the rest of the team, and Lasbra finds Netroid all by himself. Big man Tings might need more than just damage to save his life. He'll be stunned up. Force the Tycho
That's
drum,
3.
but already in the dirt. Barracuda puts him down.
Genetic's going to try his best to clear out some waves, but I got to say it again, no backdoor protection means no problem for the Olympus Bolt. 3 deads for 35 seconds. This could very well be the match.
Left Phoenix goes down. Lasbra zoning Captain Twig away. Gets the ultimate out of him, and the Olympus Bolts can surge into the throne room. Captain Twig able to pick up one. The Cyclone comes through. Might not be able to find Captain Twig, but the Bolts aren't concerned about Twig. They're concerned about the Titan. Down to half health. It's Genetics and Twig to try and put up a defense, but no ult and not enough damage. The Camelot Kings fall in game number 1. Bolts able to come back.
Olympus Bolts from the brink of despair are able to pull a win away from the Camelot Kings. What an impressive game and a breakneck pace, right? It felt like almost from minute 0, it was constant fighting across the map. The Camelot Kings, for the most part, controlling the metagame, or the macro game, rather. Neutral objectives, neutral camps, all going their way. Nets them a very early 2,000 gold lead that very quickly balloons to 7,000. But one misplay,
One minion.
just one minion, stands between the Olympus Bolts and a win and a dead Titan. Unfortunately, Stygian Torment gets caught by a singular archer.
Might want to thank Minion 34 there, Olympus Bolts, for that turnaround win for you guys. We're going to take it to a quick break, and then we'll come back with the desk to get ready for game number 2.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Analyst Desk once again. The Bolts take a 1-0 victory. A very convoluted path to get there, though, for them. But we'll get into that. It's Gormizer, it's Aggro once again. But before we get into that, I want to tell you about our merchandise apparel provider, which is SMITE Apparel. Of course, you saw all of the beautiful things that we're going forward. And, of course, what we've just recently released, these joggers that you can get for each of the individual teams. So you can rep them either while you're lounging around or if you are wearing them actually to jog. That is also something that you can do either way. You're going to be repping your team. If you want to be able to do that at home, you can also get a mouse pad.
No one jogs in joggers.
I do.
Right? Do you actually?
Well, like, in the winter, I will... Usually, I wear them over gym shorts to the gym, and then I just toss them off, and then I run. Yeah, you're right.
No,
I'm
only lounging. I'm only lounging. I really do. I'm a jogger. It's like, I used to be team sweatpants. Now I'm team joggers. So now I've got to get some more. I got to head on over to shop.smiteproleague.com.
You can get...
I just can't decide which one to get, you know?
They do look good. I like having the logos up there. Like, I like that they could be very, like, exaggerating, where it's like the Kings one could be, like, overwhelmingly purple, and it's like... That might be a little much, right, to try and wear. But nice, like, just sleek, has the logo on there, feels very comfortable. You can go there. Of course, support the teams. Every piece of merchandise that you buy from theirs goes to them. They get that money. And if you buy anything that's league, that helps us keep the lights on, like our SPL shirts and things like that. So either way, that is SMITE Apparel, shop.smiteproleague.com to be able to pick up all of that beautiful merchandise. But now we got to talk about this, Aggro. We got to talk about what was a very back-and-forth game. I thought 16 minutes in, Kings get a deicide around the Gold Fury and then get the Gold Fury done and done. I was like, all right, I know how the rest of this game plays out. And for about 10 minutes, it was done and done. And then the Bolts decided no.
It was a big defense on that left side Phoenix. And really, the Variety getting his blink interrupted and losing that Stygian Torment, obviously a big deal. But then just too deep from Captain Twig, which was kind of a theme throughout this game. I thought Twig had a couple of pretty rough overextensions on this Robin. A tough game for the Kings because they did a lot of things well. I think the Bolts, at the end of the day, their backline was just too safe in this game. That Barracuda and Venenu both were able to get away with just too much in order for the Kings to win this game. Too many times, Barra and Ven were able to put out all the damage. I mean, this kill by Barra, absolutely nasty. Forces Twig back and still able to pick him up. This was a huge play, obviously, but overall, I think that how can you look at anything but the player damage that Venenu did on this Tiamat and be like, yeah, we can handle that? Not really. It was just too much.
Yeah, I think the Tiamat, again, something that we've seen being let through these top bans a little more recently and more as time has gone on. Again, last week had a very, very overwhelming amount of games compared to what we're used to, and yet still finding this much success in the right hands. Some teams have learned to deal with her. And some players are just too difficult to deal with. 4, 2, and 7 there for Vin. Again, the slash lines aren't necessarily beautiful on either side. It wasn't this stellar game where one person pops off and carries everything, although being able to affect, 11 of your team's total kills is very big. 12 there affected by Jake. It just feels like the entire team was able to put out a lot, but 29,000 damage speaks pretty well to Vin's presence. 10k more than Ting's.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just so much damage that he's able to put out. And I mean, the fire giant that the Bolts got, it's because that Venenu could step up and just one-man zone with his control and his damage from a range, and the Kings really couldn't get past it. I think that the Kings just came in, and really this game, they were up by nearly 10,000, sieging a left side Phoenix, had fire giant. I mean, it's not like this is a horrible game for the Camelot Kings. They did a lot of stuff very well. The Bolts just were able to separate them out in the team fights towards the end stages. I mean, we saw the cleanup kill by Lasbury. He had a really big ult after that left side Phoenix defense. That was a huge play by him. Variety got isolated a couple of times. Netruid got isolated and picked on that left side. It just was a little bit too spread out there for the Kings when it came down to the later stages.
And a lot of really good work, I think, from Jake Yamoja as well. Those Rivers rebukes really helping kind of be a dividing line. We saw, of all people, it was Twig that had picked up the Phantom. I think I had even said to you, I was like, I don't know if I've ever seen a jungler with that. And I was like, but he's going to be in the mix, in the fray a little bit more often. Made sense for him. Maybe didn't go the way they wanted to. We'll see how the Kings adapt, winning that game for a majority of it, I would argue, after the back and forth. But then a little bit of a slip-up gives the Bolts exactly the window of opportunity they need. They're going to swap over here as the Kings to first pick. And last time, you have to remember, they banned out Morgan, they banned out Odin, they banned out Geb, and their top 2 were Rom, Raijin in the second pick slot. That means
Yeah.
they will have to limit a little bit, but if Tiamat makes it through, especially after the performance we saw last week, I can't imagine teams shying away from it.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the Bolts are pretty likely to ban Tiamat. They triple banned Genetics, who still was an impact on the Fafnir as expected. I mean, he continues to get triple and quadruple banned out and still manages to find some pretty strong picks. So I think the Bolts can probably let one of those Guardians through, though remember it was the Kings who had to ban the Geb because they were on second pick side. So now maybe you don't have room to ban Sylvanas alongside, or I forget the third Guardian that they banned. In
Terra.
The Terra, that's right. Yeah, I don't know if you can ban all of those. You might have to go Tiamat Geb as your bans, but I still don't think that's the end of the world. I think that, you know, the Sylvanas, the Terra, those are beatable picks, even for a player as skilled as Genetics.
And we've seen it today. I mean, having some of these Terras not necessarily perform the way that you expect. We've seen it last week as well. And you can see it is a very popular ban up against the Kings, though. 62% tied up there with the Rom and the Khepri. Although Khepri, I anticipate after today maybe starting to pull ahead of some of these others. It has been a huge thorn in their side. Also worth noting that despite Hell being very prominent, I think, for both of these teams, and I believe was one of the most big indicators of their last matchup in Phase 2, it has not quite shown its face just yet, despite being available last time around. With Tiamat off the board, Raijin's available, but you're going to have to start looking if, the Bolts, maybe for different mid laners. If you're the Kings, maybe that's a swing solo laner that you'll be able to pick up later.
Yeah, I think from the Kings here, I think RDO is probably the ban that I'm feeling the best about from this position. It's a matter of whether or not they want to first pick Geb. If they're not willing to first pick Geb, then they should probably ban it. Umoja's a very good ban as well. I'm happy with that for the Kings for sure. Jake was obviously fantastic on it. Bolts go Tiamat Geb kind of as expected from that second pick slot. And now it's an interesting proposal for the Kings. Do they want, in this situation historically, they've top picked Rom, but you know that the Bolts are scared of a couple of your picks. What world are we in that Sylvanas is top pick, by the way? I can't believe that's already happened. But it clearly is what the Kings want. It guarantees you dual lane pressure. It brings good team fight presence and has some sustain. And now the Bolts have a couple of options. Do they want to try and take the Raijin away from Big Man Tings? Do they want to take the Rom away from Netrioid? Or do they want to just try and shore up the jungle? I mean, they prioritized Nike pretty heavily last time around. They could go back to that, leave it as a flex pick. RDO is still open. You've got some options here for the Bolts.
Now, a lot, like you said, available for these back two, especially with Sylvanas. So, like you said, a very bizarre first pick. He's played 4 games. He's won 3 of those here in Phase 2. Phase 3. And so, good news is he's been successful, but slightly more successful. Same amount of games. All of them won is Nike alongside the Raijin. 2 things that, as of right now, seem pretty much like they're going to slot in very well. The Bolts looked good with the Nike, although there were definitely some moments early on where you were feeling the lack of that assassin presence from the jungle. But Raijin has just been sitting up at the top pretty much right behind Tiamat as that mage laner, mid
Yeah,
laner.
I mean, you just can't go wrong. He does everything well, so that doesn't surprise me. And this is what the Kings did in Game 1 as well. They've picked their dual lane and their mid laner early. They seem to really prioritize getting Tings' God in the top 3. Don't want to see him get more bans tossed his way and kind of let Variety get closer to a counter pick, though in first pick, of course, you won't get the final selection. And this Cirquette I like a lot for the Bolts as well, because now you've got 2 picks in Nike and Cirquette. You don't really know where they're going. It can be Cirquette support, it could be Cirquette jungle, it could be Nike jungle, it could be Nike solo. I hope we won't see Nike support, though we have seen it in the past. So this makes the bans a lot more difficult for the Kings. I think that in their position, I'd probably just take out some stuff that I think that we could struggle against, in particular probably in the jungle role, but I think the chances are very good that Lasber has his jungler between the Nike and the Cirquette, so maybe that isn't the direction the bans should go. Instead, you should try and focus out some of these frontliners.
I like it. Even though they've been able to handle it in the past, the RDO definitely caused a lot of trouble. I think Mifflin had called it out at one point, where it was, or maybe it was JMac, one of the two, had jumped, you left one cripple field, leaped forward, and all of a sudden you're just right there in another. You had nothing to do. You couldn't escape the RDO in that last engagement, or one of the last few engagements. And so trying to limit that solo lane presence. Cerberus was something that has been big just regardless in the last few weeks, but Sobek was another big pick we had mentioned in the pre-game segment earlier that both Haddix and Variety have played. And now all of those are off the table, so somebody's going to have to change something up.
Yeah, this is interesting now because what do the Bolts want to do? They have to make a choice now on where one of these two characters is going. You can still leave it as a flex option for either Haddix or for Jake, but you can't leave both open. You got to take a frontliner here. So the question is, which one? I think it's obviously better to take Jake's pick in this spot if this Circuit isn't for him.
Yeah.
Because then you let Haddix get the solo lane counter matchup, which is obviously something that they all want the vast majority of the time. So I'm probably looking for something to either guarantee that this is going to be for Jake or take Lazarus' pick in this spot. Or excuse me, Barra. I was like, where there? I know I was missing one. Yeah, Barra is the obvious one to go for. I've done this for a long time, and I'm good at my job, as you can tell by all the things that I just said.
Well, hey, they do opt in to pick up Barras because it's the safe bet, and it gets them exactly what they want, and they still get that counter matchup. Plus, and maybe to highlight it even harder, the ambiguity still stands. You don't know what jungle matchup or solo lane matchup you have to deal with here. Hunbats as well as King Arthur hovered. Hunbats locked in. This is a great pick for Twig. It has just been something that has treated him very kindly in the past, and I believe treated him very kindly recently.
Iconic pick for a jungler who's been around for a long time, and it was something that the Bolts banned game one, so you know that they respect it, and now you get it for yourself. And the Kings this time around, I think, have a draft that is a little bit more cohesive, that they really want you to group up. They want to AoE you down. You've got Merlin, you've got Sylvanas, you've got Hunbats. These are characters that really punish you for being too grouped up. That being said, I don't think the Bolts are a composition that is going to group a whole lot. They've got a ton of mobility on their team. Between the Nike, Raijin, Serket, Hachiban, those are 4 pretty mobile selections for their classes. And so if I'm the Bolts, I'm talking about making sure that we're spreading out, not getting grouped up, not being punished by these oppositions, and making sure that we're able to keep our distance from one another. You know, make sure the Serket's over here with the Nike back there. You know, you got to really be wary of how well you're spreading out in these team fights.
Well, they lock in the Daji last, and this is something that there's been a lot of conversation around Daji, and specifically when I think of Daji, as much as I think this fits well into the draft they're playing against, I think of Panatom most of the time because of the way that the Leviathans have been able to play it. But that does tend to shift that Circuit over to Jake, Nike over into the solo versus the King Arthur, and help things line up for the Bolts. And there's not a ton of... Well, I guess there's actually a decent amount of safety on the Kings here. Hunbats should get grabbed, Merlin, but otherwise Arthur, Rom, Sylvanas have ways to deal with Daji.
Yeah, Arthur has to have enough energy, which is noteworthy.
It's difficult.
It's certainly going to force beads on all these characters. I mean, even forcing Hunbats to go beads at level 1 instead of getting Blink there changes his pacing throughout the entire game. So the Daji pick is valuable in that way. It's probably going to force Sylvanas to pick it up as well, and I'm sure Genetics doesn't want to be picking that up. But this is a pick that sticks to a mobile characters very well. Sylvanas certainly fits that bill.
Yeah.
I'm a big Daji proponent. I think this god is super good. She outscales nearly every assassin in the late game. Hunbat's one of the few that actually can 1v1 her, but it isn't easy. You have to really outplay her in that moment. If the Daji plays it perfectly in these late game assassin 1v1, she wins them all because she just has so much scaling, so much instant burst, and the ability to eject herself out of your biggest damage ability. So I'm a big fan of the Daji. I'm excited to see what Lazarus is going to be able to do with it.
And you had mentioned a lot of these picks, actually most of them, we've seen fall in slot exactly where they are for the Bolts. Nike's not a matchup that I'm used to seeing against King Arthur as much lately. I feel like despite how much she's shown up, a lot of that has been in the jungle this year. The couple of solo lane matchups she had has not necessarily been against the King Arthur. How is she going to be able to fare there? I mean, she's got a second health bar. Usually she's fine.
Yeah, I think that it's most of the time on Nike you want to be playing fairly passively anyways. You can really easily keep the wave right outside your tower, just use some Ren to trim it, and then just wait until your jungler rotates over because you've got really good gank setup between the pushback from the shield, the knock up, the slow. So all those tools are pretty solid. Arthur does have some knockback immunity abilities, namely the big twirl, the blade storm.
Yeah.
So that if you can just get into the right stance, you can kind of bypass that shield entirely.
Well, we'll see what that matchup has in store for us here. Can the Kings tie it up, or will the Bolts take this 2-0? Let's find out with the casters.
Now the Bolts want to close this one out and put themselves that much closer to the second seed and put themselves that much closer to maybe trying to dethrone the Leviathans. That is their next match, and man, what a way to open up the Bolts weekend. You get to fight the Kings day number 1, then day 2 you got to go up against the Atlantis Leviathans in land. Should be fun. It's J-Mac and Mifflin here in game 2, piloting Doug here on the camera to bring us the action on Battleground. And Well, this King Arthur, we don't see it too often. It's one of those gods that kind of dominated for such a long time, and then he kind of fell out of favor, and now we're seeing him kind of peek his head back in just a little bit more here in 8.9.
Yeah, I think people saying Ardeo is the magical King Arthur just kind of reminded people like, oh yeah, King Arthur also like exists. King Arthur's the physical King Arthur. Maybe we just start playing that one again. And sure enough, he is a little bit weaker than he once was. Has seen some nerfs throughout the year. Some itemization changes have hurt him as the year has gone on as well, which is why we're starting to see him more so as a niche pick nowadays. But he still has great bully potential, phenomenal CC, single target inside of the late game, decent survivability as well. So it's not too surprising to see Variety try and pick this one up here in a Game 2 situation as Jake pulled in.
Jake yanked in. He'll take a bit of damage. Netro trying to close the
No
gap,
shot.
but doesn't have enough damage from the basics. He'll be able to walk away. And interesting to note, Awesome Jake does not have any purification beads. Went with a very aggressive blink as a first relic. So if he gets pulled again like that, at even lower health, could spell his doom. Big man Tings eats the entirety of that thousand cuts, and well, he'll throw a nice little laugh back at Lasbro.
Speaking of lack of beads, take a peek at the Camelot Kings. Every single one of them was forced to pick up beads, as Aggro had alluded to on the death. So Captain Twig in particular probably feeling the brunt of that aggression on himself. Going towards that blink on Hunbots at level 1 just feels so much better because it becomes an instant power spike. You become an instant threat on the map the second you tick over to level 5. Now Captain Twig got to position a little bit better, work a little bit harder to find those Fear No Evils. And I think there's an interesting matchup here for Jake, who's allowed to go towards that blink early on, in that the main form of CC coming from the Camelot Kings that could put threat onto the 408 is Fear No Evil, but Fear No Evil is not the longest range ability in the game. So if Jake is a little bit close to Captain Twig on that engagement, can actually just use his own ultimate, Sir Ket's ultimate, to CC immune the majority of Fear No Evil, toss him away, and just walk out immediately afterwards. So we'll see if that comes to fruition as time goes on, or whether or not Twig just says, maybe I don't go to this guy.
Lasbro going aggressive in solo. Variety has to spin away as fast as he can with
Yikes.
Beyblade, but he's not going to get far enough. Lasbro chases him out with the Soul Lantern. They put the bolts on the board first.
It's just so much damage in the early game, huh? This Daji is chunking at this point. Great knock-up from Haddix immediately after Variety comes out of the Beyblade as well. Just well-executed gank here, and just in time for the blue buff to spawn and be stripped away.
Jake going aggressive against Netruo, and they're trying to strip away that purple buff, and now with Venenu here, Genetics might be a little far out of position. He'll be able to walk back in lane. Barracuda will lead some big auto attack damage from the tree, about 35 a hit going Barracuda's way. Venenu, he'll just go back towards mid lane, get his farm back on Captain Twig, getting close to that level 5 mark, and even going for a speed buff invade to help get him just a little bit closer. Jake still had a hog, funny enough, and he's able to secure their buff and walk away with it, while Twig continues to strip the remainder of the jungle. It took the back Harpy camp and took those mid Harpies.
Yeah, just trying to find some parity up against Lazarus, who's able to strip the majority of the jungle away from the Camelot Kings himself. But at the end of the day, what does that do for Twig? It keeps him in range of Lazarus, but the same cannot be said of Variety, who is sitting at level 4 up against Haddix's 5. So all that pressure potential we were talking about from the King Arthur, its poke potential and bully potential inside of the lane, has largely been missed out on now, as Haddix actually just has more HP bars than everyone else in the lobby.
That shield from the Sentinel of Zeus, so potent.
There it is.
He'll use it here to try and box against Variety, and that's because Lasbro has shown up one more time. A good double stun from Variety will save him for only a short while. Lasbro still had that trickster spirit, and will use it to pick up a second kill for himself and for the team.
That's got to be a major tilter for Variety now. I mean, you had some fight in potential as Jake gets pulled through the wall, but Surcat, being one of the more mobile assassins, is able to work her way out of there. But back to the point, Variety now at 0-2, 4 minutes into the game, an entire level down, or maybe even a little bit more so, as an entire wave is headed into his tower. He's going to miss out on so much XP and gold here. This King Arthur, he's not a bully anymore. He is the bull lead. The weak should fear the strong, and the weak is Variety right now.
Haddix, a full level up. Lasbro ticked into 5 just before Captain Twig, so it's a matter of who's going to get that first ultimate out, who's going to burn those first sets of beads. Well, all 5 are still up on the left side of the map here for the Kings. Not a single person has had to use his purification beads. Venenu, Barra still holding on to theirs. Haddix also respecting what can come from that ultimate, especially with his down. He won't have that CC immunity to get away from the Fear No Evil, so Captain Twig has the pick of the litter right now across this map.
He does, and we'll see if whether or not he elects to get involved early on. But again, going towards that beads at level 1 means that it's so much harder for him to get involved. Sure, beads are down on a couple of targets, or maybe some CC immunity is lost out. Haddock's still no ultimate available, but Twig's got to just walk in the old-fashioned way. Standard monkey stuff, have to work on his feet, and that's just so much harder to do. So instead, Greater Scorpion.
Jake goes in, gets one with the taunt, and picks up Captain Twig with the ultimate. That's going to get the beads from the Hun Bats. A leap in from Haddox, and an ultimate slows him down, shoves him up against the wall, but he gets the beads from Haddox. Continued chase. Lasbra rooted in place by Genetics, and a teleport in. No further fight here from the Bolts, just now trying to bail out their jungler.
Yeah, and they, I mean, they didn't need much bailing out, did they? It is, all right, we're done accosting you inside your own jungle, so we're going to go ahead and head over and pull the Greater Scorpion ourselves. Haddox doing a great job zoning off Variety and Captain Twig here, so Greater Scorpion is going to go the way of the Olympus Bolts. They have desynced the timer of their own blue buff by a pretty large margin here. The Camelot Kings already halfway to respawning their own blue, whereas the Bolts just now clearing out their own, so that could add up in small little tidbits here and there for Variety to catch back up to Haddox, but Variety's pretty weak at this point still. It's just tower shield at this point. If Laswar rotates back in, could be an opportunity to try and shut him down even further.
That's a full mystical mail from Haddox, so it's not just the damage he's pumping out from abilities or from the basics. It's just literally standing next to him. He gets some free poke with that mystical mail. Jake looked at that Scorpion, but then the rest of the Kings showed up, and he had to make his way out. Luckily for him, he is a Circuit set ambush, a great tool for getting him out of danger, able to leap right over that wall. Lasbra is hunting on this left side, pull just off the mark, and a dash in against Netroid, forces the ultimate against Genetics. Immediately, Palau comes out, but beads and ults are available. That'll be an ult from Netroid and a beads from Genetics, and Netroid's response is much better, able to take down Lasbra as soon as he lands off the Palau.
But maybe Genetics could get caught out here. Ven around the corner has Ratatouille.
No beads, no ult for Genetics. He's a sitting tree in the midst of this empty, barren wasteland. Venenu picks him up and puts a kill on the board. And look at this, a Ratatouille start for both of these mid laners. I just looked down and noticed they completely have forgotten this Chronos Pendant. We just want that straight damage.
Yeah, they've got very similar builds. The only difference right now is the starter item selection, as the Olympus Bolts strip away yet another Greater Scorpion from the map. So now both neutral objectives going to be spawned up very shortly. Pyromancer coming up in just a moment, as is the Gold Fury. And the Olympus Bolts playing with a whole lot of momentum right now, 3-1. But similar to last game, the Camelot Kings doing a great job of farming up on the map. Variety has closed up a lot of his own XP deficit, and it still is just like, what, 400 gold separating these two teams, despite the Olympus Bolts coming out ahead in a lot of these engagements.
And we saw a similar feat last time around where the Bolts had a nice kill lead in the early game. The Camelot Kings, though, had the golden experience lead. This time, a little bit more even, 500 golden experience back and forth. Not really all that much of a lead here, only 8 minutes in, but the fact that the Bolts are kind of falling a little bit behind as far as their gold goes, considering they're not getting a whole lot off the tail end of these fights. The Kings are able to maintain a more stalemate pace here in game number 2. Captain Twig hasn't really had his opportunity to pop just yet, still sitting 0-0-0 for his slash line, but I mean, this is the guy who week one will hold that though. Venenu pulled in beads instantly. He'll be able to make his way out, but Genetics with these pulls, man, this guy is sick on this Sylvanas. All these players who have been pulling him out have just looked insane.
Yeah, here's the thing about how Genetics is playing on ping, too, by the way.
Yeah.
And still finding these raw pulls. It is so impressive mechanically what he's been able to accomplish so far 9 minutes into this game, and I don't expect that to slow down at any point here, as Haddox might be in a little bit of trouble. Still has the Sentinel of Zeus, so maybe not too under threat here. And you said it earlier, man, Captain Twig has not had an opportunity to get too involved as of yet. We've only seen one Fear No Evil, if memory is serving, and that was to peel himself off when Haddox was chasing him out inside of that blue buff. So Captain Twig has not really been able to make a proactive play as of yet, but he's only 3 levels away from being able to pick up that blink. And when you have blink on Hun bots, it's pretty simple. Blink in, press ult, and profit.
I mean, this is the man who day number 1, game number 1 of the new patch of the week of SPL, pumps out an 8-0 Hun bots in game number. Yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath here, you know, kind of waiting for Captain Twig to pop, because we know that he can. It will just be a matter of when does he get that opportunity. He does have a slight level lead over Lasbra after those invades earlier on, and really not falling. So with Lasbra getting these 2 kills, even having that one little death, Captain Twig, again, with the rest of the Kings, have been able to maintain an even state in the experience.
Yeah, Big Man Tings as well has a 1 level lead over Ven. Inside of mid, ADC is even, but Support Genetics has a 1 level lead over Awesome Jake. The Camelot Kings are doing their best to slow down the pace of this game and just farm up on the map. Netroid taking a little bit of a 1v1 here, but maybe taking a little bit too much damage as well. Surprised to see Jake not come in a little bit more to that.
Genetics is just getting shredded by this
Good
dodge.
heal.
Fear no evil from Captain Twig will take down one. Netro credit for the kill, and the snipes won't be necessary for the kill. Captain Twig gets him with the basic, and the chase continues until Jake jumps away. That'll be a 2-pick there for the Kings.
It was only a matter of time before Twig was able to find at least one Fear no evil, and what a big one to find for his team, removing Lasbra and Barracuda from the map. Laz not even allowed to use his ultimate inside of that engagement, as he did not have beads to deal with that large burst of CC. So Palau still available, Blink still available as well for Lasbra, so maybe a bit of a way to fight back in once he does respawn. But as of right now, the Camelot Kings have been playing from a slight deficit the entire game, now have the gold in their favor.
Maybe Lazarus wishing he had those beats that Captain Twig has picked up. Captain Twig almost at that level 12 mark now, just about halfway through level 11. He'll go back to base and
that feels
start
bad.
up on his next one. It always does feel bad, man. You're so close. You're like maybe 2 minions away or something like that, maybe 100 gold from getting that next time, but you got to go back to base because, well, I mean, look at the map. There's nothing up for him to farm. Every single Harpy, every buff camp has already been taken away. The only things standing are the much stronger objectives like the Scorpions or the Harpies or the Gold Fury, things like that. So a quick back there from Captain Twig. He does tick over to level 12 with the help of that red buff going down. So now, if he wants to, he can go back and pick up that Blink.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him just trying to clear out some of this neutral farm, like maybe a mid-wave, and then head back to base and try and clear out the speed. But as I say that, proves me wrong instantly. Clears the speed and actually continues out towards the lane. I mean, that is such a huge power spike to be able to pick up that secondary relic that I'm surprised that he's kind of waiting on this purchase for now, but all this farm on the map, all these back Harpies, got to clear those out first.
Twig will teleport into the Sacred Monkey. Jake is the one who might be out there on the run. Variety's invading the rest of the bolts over by the Fire Giant that spawned in. Variety gets a nice stun against Haddix. The Fire Giant forces the Sentinel of Zeus, and a 2-man ultimate from Captain Twig pushes them away from where he was probably intending. A teleport in from Lasbra, and an instant cancel to the Palau as Venenu picks up one, but now Venenu surrounded by 2. Genetics and Netroid closing that gap, and Variety finding Lasbra. Venenu now stuck in the middle of 4 and chopped right down.
Well, that's why Captain Twig decided to stay out. He knew that he'd be able to turn around that fight. Had he landed the Sacred Monkey off of the Fear No Evil, probably goes even further in their favor, but sticks around a little bit too long, takes a lot of damage, and then able to turn one back around. But the Camelot Kings, 2-for-1 trade and put Pyromancer in their pocket as well. So that gold lead again, that was nearly 600 in favor of the Olympus Bolts just 2 minutes ago, is now closer to 2,000 actually in favor of the Camelot Kings, and experience a little bit more telling, 3,000 in favor of the Order side team. But this is very similar to the pacing that we saw in Game 1. The Olympus Bolts started to falter a little bit around that 15-minute mark, and then one misplay is all it took for them to close it back up. So I'm not willing to count them out just yet.
Yeah, you can't count anything out. Minion 34 is a tricky one. You never know when he'll strike and try and turn the tide of the game in the opposite way, or maybe continue and push it further for your team. Camelot Kings up with about a 2,000 gold lead, as you are highlighting, a 5-4 on the kills. So they finally were able to get the kills in their favor, where the Bolts, Game 1 and Game 2, were taking those early kill leads. They were 3-1 up last game, 3-1 up this game, and now falling just a little bit far behind. Awesome Jake goes for a Bulwark of Hope for his second item immediately after that Sovereignty, try and get a little bit of that magical protection online.
Yeah, he's been getting shredded a little bit too quickly inside of these fights, so that health shield should help him out a fair bit, just trying to stay survivable in these engagements, especially considering Circuit, pretty easy to lock down once she's decided she wants to fight. Very immobile. That ultimate going to lock you in place onto an enemy god whenever he's looking for that opportunity. And take a peek at that damage output from Captain Twig already. One tap of the Sacred Monkey takes off about 10% of Ven's HP bar. Had he teleported in and auto-attacked afterward, probably takes another 10%. So Captain Twig, absolutely a threat on the map right now. 2 levels up over Lasbra.
Working on his third mace to get a Brawler's Beat Stick to try and answer what little healing may even be against this team. Just go ahead and pick up that item further increase that damage spike and some more flat pen. Variety, he'll be shoved against the wall a little bit here by Haddix, but such is the nature of going up against the Nike. It's never fun being on the receiving end of that barrier, but Nike will fare just fine. Has his Glad Shield and a Mystical Mail online, so very heavy on the physical defense, and will now pick up his first magic defense. I mean, look what they're going against. They're going against 4 physicals and then a single Raijin. Not saying you shouldn't pay attention to magical defense, but it is a Raijin, so you probably want to have a little bit in your build.
Yeah, if you don't put the proper amount of respect on the Ven, you're just losing out in these fights as Jake finds Genetics close to his own tower, but
So tanky.
yeah, he's super tanky at this point. Ven needs a little bit more penetration inside the build, a little bit more passive once he gets that Soul Reaver available. And then maybe you can look at Genetics.
Variety's still looking at this 2v1 against Haddix and Lasbra, just trying to turn them from the blue buff, but an ultimate from Captain Twig
See ya.
pushes Jake right back to the rest of the Kings. It's a quick pick on the support, and maybe more. Barracuda has to use the dash to get away, that EI Jutsu used for safety, and now the Kings can set their sights towards the Gold Fury.
They can, but Barracuda still has a good deal of damage output, has the kin size, moving into the Titan's Bane as well. He will shred given the opportunity, but the only thing being shredded right now is the Fury itself. Camelot Kings credit for this one, despite the efforts of Barracuda to try and scare him off.
Now 4,000 gold lead for the Kings, 6-4 in the kill, so 1 kill is all the Kings need to open up the ways to go for these objectives. They take down 1, but on this right-hand side, it's been Variety and Haddix standing by each other for majority of these last couple of fights. I don't think I've seen Variety or Haddix leave that solo lane since even well before that last little skirmish broke out, but mostly just trying to keep this King Arthur at bay, try and find some kind of way back in. Haddix sitting level 15-15, but when you're talking about deficits, it's Captain Twig versus Lasbury, 3-level lead for this Hunbats.
Yeah, that is so massive. Twig essentially for the first 12 levels said, all right, I'm not really looking to fight. I'm just going to farm up the entire time. And what did Lasbra do? He went for a lot of ganks early on, especially inside of that solo lane. The 2 deaths that Variety has to his name were handed to him by Lasbra. And that means that that's time Lasbra wasn't spending farming, giving Captain Twig the opportunity to farm up a little bit more so in his own right. So that's going to put him at 16 to Lasbra's 14 at this point. And dude's a menace. I mean, every single time I see Fear No Evil drop now, I mean, it's getting 2 or 3 targets or at least finding 1 kill.
Oh, Genetics and Netroid want this kill. Genetics won't be able to blink in, so it'll just be a dash away for Barracuda. And with Big Man Tings on the rotation as well as Captain Twig. Barracuda might have to count himself lucky there was a tier 1 tower there to slow down their pace. But Captain Twig is still sitting around this side of the jungle. Might want to go for an engagement, but instead he'll leap away and just go back to farming with the rest of the Kings. They'll make sure to strip out everything on this left side.
Heavy grouping from the Olympus Bolts on the left-hand side here, but nothing to fight over as the Oni Fury's a good ways off from respawning. The Camelot Kings just kind of posturing as if they want to siege that tier 1 duo tower is enough to drag the entirety of the Bolts to this side of the map. And when you're already behind, spending time trying to put up a ghost defense or a defense against a ghost offense, rather, as the Camelot Kings aren't even attempting that siege, feels pretty bad. But instead, D6 push timer means that Netroid and Genetics now going to take out a tier 1 tower with 0 opposition, and the Olympus Bolts just head back to base. That is good macro play from the Order side team here, pushing their lead even further now, closer to 4,000.
Big power spike, but an expensive one for Lasbra, finished up by Heartseeker as soon as he goes back to the base. So a little bit of extra penetration in the build, just a little bit of extra tick damage to throw on top of this Dodgy, who's also built a Crusher. So it's yellow numbers on yellow numbers on yellow numbers. As soon as that ability comes through, 1,000 cuts, expect to see a ton of numbers. And the Pyromancer saw a lot of numbers, but they weren't fun for him. He'll fall down quickly. 18 minutes in, the Camelot Kings pick up another objective.
Yeah, luckily for the Pyromancer, that was a painless death. We'll see if Arati is afforded that same luxury surrounded by 3.
Goes up in the ultimate, but he finds Lasbra, slams him right back down, and Veneno will take him out with the tight go drums. Netroid on the run, but Barracuda catches him out, and Jake slammed against the wall by the ultimate from
Twig.
Captain Twig. Pow Wow picks him up, and that's 3 down now for the Camelot Kings. Genetics separates himself from the mid laner. He'll get slowed down and burned down. Veneno grabs 1, and it's only Tings left alive.
People forget after that dominant stint from the Olympus Bolts where they were just playing proactively on the map every game that this is a counter-punch team. Anytime the Camelot Kings step out of line, you better believe every single one of the Olympus Bolts is going to be there to punish them for it. Now, yet again, one mistake might net them the Fire Giant.
Big man Tings is being zoned out by Haddix. Even Venenu walks over just to make sure everything's good, but Fire Giant takes Bear, almost takes Laspra too. He was living on less than 100 health after that knockup. The Olympus Bolts, at the end of the day, they get the Fire Giant, but man, losing Barracuda, that's gotta hurt.
It's not ideal, but considering what the circumstances were going into that fight, I don't think the Olympus Bolts are even allowed to complain about losing Barracuda here. Sure, he's dead for 30 seconds, but 4 members with Fire Giant, 20 minutes in the game with every tower still standing for the Camelot Kings, and Oni Fury going to be spawning up in just under a minute. Means that even with Fire Giant just on 4 members, you probably got a pretty decent gold spike coming your way. Tier 1 towers, essentially a foregone conclusion. I imagine we see the Camelot Kings put up at least a soft defense on these Tier 2s, but Oni Fury, I don't think we see the Kings step up to that one.
Genetics walk forward, but as soon as he saw Awesome Jake up on that ward, he'll be sure to walk back towards the Tier 1 tower. They still have quite a few towers standing on the map, 5 of them to be exact, 2 Tier 2s and then the Tier 3s all across the board. Not a whole lot of tower pressure has come out of the Olympus Bolts just yet, and that's mostly just because everything else has been not so fun. A nice little pull by Genetics again. You highlighted earlier, we'll say it again. This man is getting these pulls on ping.
Yeah, and that was just a style pull. Like, he knew there was no follow-up there. He just didn't want Haddix being annoying up against big man Tings, kind of like how the Camelot Kings are playing annoying in the right-hand side of the map. A little bit of a base race here. It's just Haddix on the defense, so if nobody else from the Bolts back, this could be a Phoenix Siege, and just by posturing like that, able to generate enough threat to send Ven back to base, but Barracuda's all you need on the left-hand side.
Barracuda and on some Jake on the left side, but it's Haddix versus 3, and with Tings rotating in, it makes it a 4th, but now that Venenu is here, we've got a little bit of damage support, and Fear No Evil comes out, but it doesn't do quite enough to Haddix. Finally, he'll fall down. Nitroid credited to the kill, and everybody on the Bolts except for Barra has gone back to base. It's Barracuda who's now going to be doing the defense pushes. He'll be taking out that left side Tier 2. And now Awesome Jake gets the ult against Variety. Venenu in trouble. The snipes from Netroid. Not going to get the second one. Needs the third one. Will find it. Captain Twig and Netroid team up to take him down. Laspra up on the Palau. Doesn't pull anybody, and he may be the one in danger. Trying to turn it back to Captain Twig. He manages to get one, but now it's just Jake here on the defense.
And Jake is going to run away. There's no way he takes this fight. We'll see whether or not Barracuda can take this Phoenix in a 1v1 up against big man Tings. Jake, best of luck, 1 versus 3.
Barracuda will back away, so now it's just Jake to play the defense against Netroid and the other 2 frontliners of the Camelot Kings, and he won't be as fortunate or as successful as Barra on that push. It'll be a Phoenix for the Camelot Kings, the right side one, but Barra has done some damage on this left lane, making sure to take both those towers, and even Phoenix sitting at pretty critical health.
Man, the Camelot Kings play that whole sequence so incredibly well, grouping up on the right-hand side, effectively crushing the push of the Bolts by not even showing up to it, forcing a defensive rotation from the Bolts, just trying to keep that Phoenix alive. And from there, it was the staggered backs of the Bolts that gets punished by the Kings. It's Haddix alone at first, gets dominated. Jake tries to go in to stop some backs. Ven gets dominated. Now Gold Fury burning down quick.
Jake finds a double taunt in the backline. Oni Fury low, and the Kings will take it out. Barracuda gets hit by the ultimate from Genetics, and Jake will dash away, but it's Haddix dashing in with his leap. Gets pulled back by Genetics, but he'll be chopped right down. Haddix credited for 1, and Jake will find another. Netroid down, and now it's only Variety left to run for the Camelot Kings. The Bolts continue pushing up this left side, and with that weakened Phoenix, it may be an opportunity for the Bolts to grab something.
50 seconds on Netroid, 30 on Genetics. It's up to big man Tings, Twig, and Variety is not allowed to go back to base. What you got is all you're going to have for this defense.
Haddix spots Captain Twig, teleport in with the Sacred Monkey. Barracuda now in danger. Variety putting a lot of pressure on him, but it's the Tycho drums from Venenu.
One more.
The last shot to take him, but Variety's able to juke it out. Lives on less than 50 health, and now it's Big Man versus Laspra, and that fight's going all Laspra.
Lazara may have got the kill, but trades out his own life. Captain Twig able to pull 1 back in their favor, so it's a 1-for-1 Phoenix trade at the end of the day. Don't worry too much about those minions, all right? Yeah, they're getting cleared out. Haddix is there and ready for the defense. And who got the more valuable Phoenix in this exchange? It's got to be the Olympus Bolts. The Phoenix furthest away from the Fire Giant, especially considering it's going to be respawning here in just under 20 seconds, means that the Olympus Bolts are in a very good position to try and keep up this aggression.
Minions are pushed out on that right side. Only one little one still straggling by. It'll make its way there, but it's a Pyromancer for Captain Twig. He'll be able to solo that one, no problem. Bumba's Spear online for the jungler, so he's been able to go back, and he's got his Heartseeker, so another big power spike for the jungler. Meanwhile, Lasbra falling just a little bit behind in that build. Still hasn't got his spear online, but instead he went for a Magi's Cloak to give himself a little bit of extra CC immunity via way of that bubble, so he can maybe catch that initial Fear No Evil out and then save his beats for something else.
Camelot Kings with a heavy grouping inside the jungle right now, trying to find exactly one pick before they can head over towards that Fire Giant. And if they are capable of doing so, would swing favor towards them very heavily here. It's Big Man Tings just now showing himself on the left-hand side. So the Olympus Bolts only need to play safely and regroup to make a lot of things go their way. And that's exactly what they're doing this time around. Awesome Jake, a little bit too far forward. I was holding my breath a little bit. But Surcat's incredibly mobile, and Jake, certainly one that knows his own limits, is going to be able to head back over towards that Fire Giant, which has spawned up. 25 minutes into this game, gold still 2,000 in favor of the Camelot Kings, with map state favoring the Bolts.
Look at the ward control that he's got. One ward back behind the Fire Giant pit. There was one right at the entrance to the mid lane on both top and bottom of that mid camp. And then he's even got one just chilling back here right behind Genetics. So Jake probably not too worried about how much he could have been caught out in there, but he'll make sure to at least continue to establish this ward control. No ward directly on the Fire Giant just yet. It's all around the backside of the pit. Genetics, he'll walk right past both of them. Variety at the front line. Kings are trying to get set up for this Fire Giant, but with that left side Phoenix down, they're going to have somebody there sooner rather than later to keep those minions pushed back and keep them out of that base.
Right side, Phoenix going to be respawning very shortly here for the Olympus Bolts. Maybe one or two more fire minion waves for them to contend with, and then they've got free reign of the map. Meanwhile, though, the Camelot Kings not nearly as lucky. This long, slow, prolonged battle around the Fire Giant has allowed this fire minion wave to push up incredibly far, and do my eyes deceive me, Lasbra wants the 1v1.
Lasbra goes in, Captain Twig in the 1v1,
See ya.
but that bubble holds him off just long enough. Lasbra gets the solo kill against Twig, and now the Bolts can start looking towards this Fire Giant. It's a 4v4 on the right-hand side, and Lasbra will go back to base after his victory.
Only one more fire minion wave for the Olympus Bolts to contend with, and I'm not even sure it's on their radar right now. Lasbra comes up in a big way for his team and also holds on to his own beads. At the very end, it was the bleed damage that finishes off Captain Twig. I thought maybe for a moment he would be able to at least trade out 1 for 1, but instead, Lasbra knows exactly what is needed, and that was all beads maintained, blink available as well. Ultimate even still held on to this play from Lasbra, man. It might have gotten some repercussions for the Camelot Kings.
Olympus Bolts, because they have the advantage on the right side, they'll go to the fire and maybe even pick up Genetics. They'll get the beads from the tree and a pal out to
There
try
it
and
is.
pull him back in. Lasbra's got
See
him,
ya.
and Lasbra will take him down. The basic after is enough, and the Bolts take the Fire Giant. The left side Phoenix about to respawn, so there is still some hope for the Kings on that defense. They've still got a few towers that the Bolts might want to try and chew through before walking to that throne room.
Here's the thing about Barracuda. He's got the Fire Giant this time around, so
Yeah.
these towers going to be a little bit easier to strip away. Tier 2 on right. That's a foregone conclusion already burning
no,
down. And Twig,
Twig.
that's speed, bud.
Twig, you may not have learned your lesson too well last time. Lasbra does it
Not
to
worth.
him once again, and that's another pick for the jungler. Lasbra grabs him, and now it's Genetics down for 15, Captain Twig down for 50, and the Phoenix under fire by the Bolts. A blink in from Haddix with the Ren just to zone the Camelot Kings away, but he'll leap right in with the Sentinel of Zeus. Now Netroid's the one in danger. He'll have to run all the way back to the base.
Variety able to keep a couple of members of the Bolts at bay here, but not enough to keep them off of that Phoenix. Still 2 towers in mid for the Bolts to work through, but plenty of time to work with. 30 seconds left on Captain Twig's respawn, and the Olympus Bolts are incredibly healthy. Not a lot of sustain inside of their composition, but Fire Giant able to shore them up and keep those HP bars topped off.
They'll make their way towards the left side. That Phoenix is weakened. It could just be a couple that are needed to take it down.
Lasbra.
But instead, they'll rotate everybody but Lasbra. And now that Lasbra's caught in a 3v1, that's an easy short for them to grab that left side Phoenix. And Genetics caught out by himself. Lasbra on the pal out, delaying for as long as he can.
No shots.
But he delays for not long enough. Variety able to grab him on the tail end, but now it's Jake who picks up Variety, and a quick retreat from the Bolts. They get the left Phoenix, the Fear No Evil, not back up yet for Captain Twig, but now he's got it back in, and he gets a big turnaround. Barrett down, Venenu down, and now Haddix is the one in danger. A leap in will slow him down, and Captain Twig, with the help of a tower shot, picks up the triple kill, taking down Haddix, and only one left for the Bolts.
Captain Twig may have fallen twice in a row, but the the third time comes up big for his team here. Triple kill to keep the game alive, but the Olympus Bolts with Fire Giant were at least able to strip away 2 Phoenixes from the Camelot Kings. A lot of time here for the Kings to play with, though. Maybe able to get 1 Phoenix back, but I don't think they can look for the end. Not with Jake standing right in front of them.
Less than 20 seconds for Lasbro. Jake is going to try and delay the frontliners because everybody else from the Kings are so far back. Netroid hasn't even got to the tower until just now, so they'll get at least
Phoenix
a
even.
tier 2 tower, but no further push towards the Phoenix. Captain Twig's able to hold off the left side fire minions. Now will push away the right side minions. The Camelot Kings, they at least hold themselves off for the time being. They're able to delay the game just a little bit longer and even this up, but we get a nice first-person perspective from Captain Twig as he picks up that double kill right off a phenomenal defense by the Kings.
Sometimes things just line up real well for a Hunbot's triple ultimate into a triple kill for Captain Twig, and then immediately into the Primal Fury afterward. But again, both side lane Phoenixes down for the Camelot Kings. These are long shot odds to continue these defenses.
No, not
and
again.
We've been here before.
Not again. Lasbro goes in. He's able to hold on for a while, but this time it's Twig actually taking him down, but it will be a trade out. The bleed was enough to take down Captain Twig right after, and now it's going to be the 4v4 defense for the Kings.
That was huge for Captain Twig. If he isn't at least able to trade out Lasbro, that could have spelled the end of this one for the Camelot Kings, but instead it is now a 4 versus 4 with only 1 Phoenix still standing. But Captain Twig's ultimate might be one of the most valuable cooldowns on the side of the Camelot Kings. Lasbro may have done enough.
Jake dives in, looking for big man Tings. He'll grab him and get the beads out of the mid laner. A flicker over the wall gets him out of danger, but the rest of his team is the one who needs some help. Genetics at half health, and the snipes from Netroid against Barra will do some damage, but now it's Variety in danger. Jake able to pick up big man in the back line. Variety falling low, and Hags bullying everybody. He will surge forward with the rest of the team and force them under the mid lane. Phoenix. Jake dives in, gets the double taunt, but immediately dashes right back out.
Raiju not popped on a Genetics, so he's going to keep the majority of his HP bar. Variety, though, exposes himself in the jungle.
Finds Barracuda, and Barracuda puts him right down. Now it's 2 gone for the Camelot Kings. Captain Twig back up, and Fear No Evil will be available in just a moment. Now able to at least have some kind of a defense, but the right side Phoenix is about to respawn for the Camelot Kings, so they can push out this last wave of minions and try and get their defenses back up.
I think the Olympus Bulls are going to wait one more time, go for the Fire Giant one more time before they attempt another siege here. It's going to be spawning up in just under 30 seconds, and still with 2 Phoenixes down, the Olympus Bolts have all the map state advantage. Lasbro has learned now that the 1v1 isn't as easy as it once was up against Captain Twig, which seems like still very willing to go for it, hunting inside the jungle for the monkey.
Well, we're going for a part number 4. This
Sup?
time Lasbro uses the ultimate to get away, and he'll get his 3rd win in that 1v1 column and put Captain Twig down for another 55 seconds.
Captain Twig has got to be so frustrated here. I mean, if it's happened 5 times, Lazarus won it 4 times. That is an 80% 1v1 win rate for the Daji of the Olympus Bolts, and Captain Twig yet again going to be absent from a very important fight.
Fire Giant started up by the Bolts, and there will be no contest from the Camelot Kings. They're just going to have to let this one go. Down to half health and burning even faster. Baron Ben have more than enough DPS to take this neutral objective off the map, and with their 3rd Fire Giant under their belts, the Olympus Bolts can try and look to push out the last 2 Phoenixes that have just respawned and then make their way towards the mid.
And now the Olympus Bolts working on the right-hand side. No defense from the Camelot King, so this one's going to fall down just to the efforts of the 408 here. Left side Phoenix is pushed out as far as the minions are concerned, but that Phoenix is incredibly weak. An enhanced Fire Giant means you're not worried about the minions anyway.
Jake is getting slow poked by big man Tings, but Haddix is at the front line for the Bolts. Lasbro waiting on the left side, looking for a chance to dive his way in. Captain Twig's back up, ultimate back online for this Hoon bots, and that could be all that they need for this base defense.
Magi's Blessing is available to Lasbro, so if he is able to spot Captain Twig out isolated, might be willing to take that 1v1 yet again, as Awesome Jake pulls the attention of Variety towards this right-hand side.
Lasbro goes in. Pow Lao is going to do some damage to Captain Twig. The beads will make sure he doesn't get pulled, but the damage is done. The Phoenix is gone, and the beads are burned from the jungler.
So both side lane Phoenixes yet again removed from the map. What are the Olympus Bolts going to do with this time? Maybe head back to base. They've got a fair bit of gold in pocket here, or maybe just trying to bait the Camelot Kings a little bit forward into the jungle. It's immediately spotted out by Variety with a ward over the wall. Jake clears it out, but that does spell the end of this ambush attempt. The Olympus Bolts with Fire Giant, Enhanced Fire Giant. On 5 members, only have 1 bird standing between them and the exposed Titan of the Camelot Kings. And I think they're going to look for the end here. The Olympus Bolts are in a very good position with these waves pushing in.
Jake trying to distract Variety. Maybe the rest of the team can start moving forward in mid, but they're still sitting so far back. It's just this 1v1, or maybe it can be a 2v1. Captain Twig starts walking towards this right side of the map, but also Jake at least deters them for a short while. Lasbra pushing forward on the left side. Be you watching him because he's been going for these cheeky little flanks time and time again. He's come successful in just about every single one.
I don't know, Twig's got to play pretty cautiously here, right? He might have Lasbra waiting around the corner to take his lunch money as he has been for the last 34 minutes. And now finally the Bolts starting to work their way forward.
Jake blinks in the back, finds Captain Twig with the ultimate and pushes him away from the team. Variety down to half health. Nanu even lower. The ultimate from Netroid shredding through him, but Variety has to go back to base. The mid Phoenix exposed. Fear no evil from Captain Twig finds
massive.
And maybe a second after Netroid picks him up, and it's Jake and Haddix now on the run. Haddix at half health. Captain Twig with a big ultimate pushes it forward, but look at the minions collapsing in.
Meanwhile, the Camelot Kings trying their best to chase out the Olympus Bolts, won't allow these backs to come through. Lasbra thought for a second maybe he can go for an end attempt on his own, but instead is now shifting his attention to rejoin his team.
Captain Twig is here with 3 other members of the Kings. It's a Variety on the soul-based defense, and he'll be enough to at least hold the minions out for the time being. Jake is trying to be the solo effort of really just being the distraction here up against the Kings.
It's dangerous.
But seems like they may have spotted out Lasbra and Haddix. They 3 versus 4 collapse towards the mid lane. Phoenix, maybe a pincer maneuver. Jake able to taunt Captain Twig away. Mid Phoenix under fire. Haddix pulled back in. Haddix shredded down to half, but so is Netroid falling low, and the poison is enough, plus the pout loud. Jake credited with the kill. Captain Twig goes down. It's a double kill for Jake. Big man
Poison
Tings
keeps spreading.
Wants to try and get one. He'll at least turn it around with the poison spreading. Now Big man Tings is able to fire it right back and put down Haddix. It's a 2-for-2 trade at the mid Phoenix.
But time has been purchased, and Ven is going to be coming in pretty soon here. Genetics, very slow, but a tree might get caught out. If Raiju is applied, the slow should be enough. Barracuda, well, he's got one of his own.
Jake's going to cut off the path, and Big Man is diverted right back to
Almost.
Banana. Puts him down. The burn, not enough. And with Genetics gone, it's only Variety on the defense. 30 seconds on Twig. 30 seconds on Netroid, but this Titan is looking worse for wear.
Variety has been fighting for his life against these minion waves for like the last 40 seconds while the rest of his team attempt to return an end to the Olympus Bolts. Variety has been left on cleanup duty and now is the only one standing between the Bolts and a 2-0 victory.
Barracuda will scoot right past him, and to the Titan they'll go. He gets picked up. The Fire Minions are doing the deed, and it will be the Olympus Bolts coming out with the 2-0 victory to shut down the Kings and send them packing here in week 3.
Man, that game is so different if Lasbra literally just doesn't take Captain Twig's number like 17 times. The one team fight, the couple of team fights that we saw from Twig where he gets involved, utilizes that Fear No Evil with the rest of his team inside those Phoenix defenses, went their way handily. The Camelot Kings repulsed the Olympus Bolts. Unfortunately for the Camelot Kings, they weren't given that opportunity many times. Captain Twig was dead a lot.
Yeah, Lasbra, the primary connoisseur of his life, he'll be able to take it multiple times, and the Bolts at the end of the day will be the ones to come out with the 2-0. We'll take it to a break, and we'll be back right after.
I gave up dabbing for Lynn.
Cool. No more dabbing for Final. He looked at me and said, I'm going to be on that stage next year. I'm going to become a world champion.
Hey there, Smite fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are gonna take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're gonna need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of cores.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the Smite Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible Smite experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
No, here I was trying to get Aggro to read the Alienware stuff once again, and he told me no, so I'll do it. I'll do my
here's
due
the deal.
diligence.
I just don't remember any of it.
Yeah, I've memorized
I watch it every day. I said it once upon a time, and I can't say any of it again unless I had like a script in front of me.
You've got Discord on the laptop. It's in the sponsor channel.
So okay, so I'm just doing it for you. Hold on, I guess I'll go over here. Let's
I
scroll
was really you know what? I can do it for you real fast. SmiteGame.com/Alienware. You use code SMITEAW on checkout. That's
Definitely
actually really important for discounts. Of course, the pros are playing on the Aurora Ryzen R10 desktops with the 25-inch 240 Hz gaming monitors.
That's right. And then you got to check out the rest of their awesome products at smitegame.com/Alienware. And click on your region and use code SMITEAW for those special discounts.
Wait, does it actually say click on your region?
It does say that on this copy, but
yeah,
none of us ever read that part. And then thanks again to Alienware for partnering it for us for the Season 8 of the Smite Pro League. Check out their products and give them a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware. And join their global community at alienwarearena.com. There you go.
I need to start doing these a lot more straight. That sounded way better than 90% of my ad reads for the last, I mean, I get the points across, but that was just better. Hey, the Bolts win the set 2-0. Also, yeah, do the Alienware thing he just said. Bolts win 2-0 over the Kings. And game 1 is back and forth and tumultuous. The Kings are really in control, and then all of it happens around the left Phoenix. Game 2 is just a hodgepodge of fights. I mean, it's going back and forth every other way. If you blink one fight, all of a sudden the Bolts are in control. Next fight, Kings are in control. Next fight, Bolts are in control. But a lot of it came down to Lasbra. We put a lot of weight on his shoulders today. KDA 1.56 maybe doesn't scream out to you. 28,000 damage isn't anything to scoff at, though. But it's these 1v1s so consistently going his way. You had highlighted it on the desk before the game. It just made it so much easier for the Bolts.
Yeah, look, I mean, this game was... I don't even know how to describe it, man. It was ugly for a lot of this game. There was just so much fighting and positioning mistakes and all this kind of stuff, but it allowed for some really cool individual plays. I mean, obviously, Lasbra kept finding Twig at the exact moment. I mean, we saw in that first highlight that Twig had just used his jump and his 2 in order to clear Fire Wave, and it was just had some really good instincts to be able to hunt him down there. I thought Big Man played really well in this game. This last play, it doesn't work out for him, but this play to go in onto Venenu. He nearly kills him, and that could have easily changed the outcome of that game. Some really heads-up decision-making at times, and then some really bad decision-making at times. And that's what high-level gameplay is sometimes. It's not always perfect, not always super clean, but at the end of the day, I think the Bolts had more moments of good play than the Kings did, and that's why they came out with the victory.
And that's ultimately the thing that, like you said, matters the most. They get the Titan kill. Granted, it takes a few times. They surge against those Phoenixes and towers quite often. And it's 10, 8, and 5. 15 affected kills, a few of them being solo kills. One of the deaths being a trade-out with Captain Twig. But Lasbra does a lot in that game. I actually have to give credit because the last play, not only does Vin help get those kills, despite Tings trying his best to stop it, but Lasbra gets rid of Netroid right before that, and that was the moment where I think I looked up and I was like, okay, this should be done now. Like, once Netroid was dealt with, it felt like everything else could line up because that ROM was just too good at thwarting them every time they got to the Phoenix line.
Exactly. The ROM, I mean, Twig had a massive ultimate underneath that mid-Phoenix that nearly turned the game. Definitely a roller coaster game for Captain Twig, who had some certain lowlights, but then a couple really big plays and was putting out great damage and was in the right spots sometimes, and then other times he wasn't.
Made things a lot of fun to watch because of how back and forth it was. I can imagine it was very stressful to play. We'll find out right now as we talk to Lasbra for the post-game interview. And so, Lasbra, I'm just going to follow up on that. Was that a very stressful game to play?
Yeah, it's kind of stressful and kind of crazy. A lot of small skirmishes happening everywhere and a lot of fighting that probably should not happen, but it happened, and at least it came out in our favor.
Ultimately, right, you're able to come through. I'll talk to you about Game 2 since that one's the fresh on everyone's mind. Your dodgy late-game plays were making strides, but how were you deciding when to hunt for Twig and when to look for teamfights? Were you just always on the prowl?
Just find Twig and try and kill him. That was the goal, honestly. I don't like the team fight. Nah. Just in that game, it's just, I don't know. It worked out a lot of times, so it's just like, I'm just going to keep doing it.
And hey, it continued working out. There was one that went with both of you dying, but ultimately, you still came out on top, I guess, in the 1v1 trades. With Game 1, it was a little shaky, but the whole set comes out your way. I'm just wondering, you guys are pushing your way towards the top 2. A lot of concern. Are you worried about being the teams that get to choose for the groups, or are you just trying to stay up as much as you can here in this phase?
I don't really worry about it. I think whatever group you get in, you have to be able to beat them anyways. So if it's going to be a harder group or whatever, I'm sure we'll come out in our favor.
Well, hey, you just showcased that you can push through some really, really difficult games. Congratulations on your win, man. Thanks for joining me here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Just a good performance all around. The Bolts get to be happy about it. Granted, I'm sure they're going to watch it back and hide their heads in shame, remembering high school memories. They're like, no, that didn't happen. No. We got to forget about those and move forward. But they get the win here, which is a very big, important win for them. But that is not all they have this weekend. We'll take a look at the schedule tomorrow. They are kicking things off in studio up against the Leviathans. Not an easy match. Even though this was a 2-0, wasn't an easy match, goes into another hard one with the undefeated Leviathans standing in their way. Later tomorrow, we'll have the Dragons versus the Scarabs, also in studio. And of course, we'll get to see a couple of these teams, the Kings a little bit later on versus the Warriors, the Scarabs again against the Valkyries on Sunday. Making sure that we round things off with some very interesting matchups, especially with the way the Warriors have been playing. Yeah. We can take a peek at the standings and see how things are going to shift for these sets. 3-1 now ties the Titans and the Bolts. The Kings at 2-2 and potentially able to push themselves to 3-2 later this week. Warriors may be able to go to 2-2 and take the Kings down to 2-3 and cause some crazy changes so far that we have seen just in these standings now.
Yeah, I mean, Leviathan's Bolts game tomorrow is going to be huge. They would take the Bolts up to first place, set the Leviathans down a little bit, kind of put them back in the middle of the pack. Yeah. If Leviathans can improve to 4-0, set the Bolts to 3-2, I mean, that changes the landscape of the entire league heading into where you need to be top 2 coming out of this round robin stage. So a lot of really fun implications for what is guaranteed to be a 6 set tomorrow.
Especially because you're in this position. I mean, 3-0 doesn't seem too insane. I mean, it's really good. Honestly, it's actually a great start. But realistically, you're only playing these teams once right now before we go to the group stages. So 3-0, if it becomes 4-0, 6-0. You can only get up to 7-0. No matter what, there's a certain number where you are just on top of the world. I'm sure the Leviathans are looking forward to that one. Tomorrow, 1 p.m. in studio all day as we watch the Bolts take on the Leviathans and the Dragons and Scarabs. Make sure you tune in when it is live. But for now, for myself, from Aggro, from everyone here, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you tomorrow.
Peach it.